across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. As I was saying on Monday afternoon, about 2:30, Andy Burnham is the new Prime Minister. Hey, we know that already. His new cabinet now been accused of dividing the country on day one. However, 7 ministers hailing from the northwest alone against just 2 from London town, sparking accusations of favouritism towards his own Greater Manchester backyard. When you appoint by postcode, boy, you're in trouble. Meanwhile, Burnham has ordered his cabinet to find spending cuts after just 72 hours in office, despite already announcing hundreds of millions of quid in new commitments on rough sleeping, energy bills, bus fares, with critics warning some of these pledges remain entirely unfunded. How's he going to do it? How can he afford his own plans? And villagers in Piddington have voted overwhelmingly for their own independence referendum in a protest at Home Office plans to house 1,250 exclusively male asylum seekers nearby. A separate legal action accuses the department of unlawfully sneaking migrants into a former army base in East Sussex under the cover of darkness. What is going on out there when small places like Piddington, where is it, Finn, are looking for independence? Yeah, it's in England, apparently. Yeah, thanks for that. We've got some really stunning research on this show. Lots to get through, everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news. Thank you for all the little get well messages that popped into the inbox over the last day or so. Listen, when nature says, you're sick, man, you got to walk that plank. Thank you to Samara, who pitched in. Charlie Rowley, yeah, not so good. But he was here yesterday. I love Charlie. You know I'm joking. So Andy Burnham has been in Downing Street for 5 minutes, yet already the promises are arriving like confetti.
I'm cutting taxes on your energy bills. I've said it, Westminster isn't working for people. I know too many families are struggling. It's not good enough. I know we need to give people more breathing space. This is a start. It will save tens of millions of households money, but there's more we can do. Let's bring back hope, everybody. That's what we're starting to do.
Thank you, Gandhi. Those little TikTok-y, well, Instagram-y things in this case are going to get really, really boring really, really quickly. So, let's look at the good side. Cheaper bus fares, lower energy bills, more housing, greater investment, stronger public services and a free Labrador pup for every single family. What is not to like about this stuff? But there's one very obvious question. My 12-and-a-half-year-old worked it out. Where does the money come from, Daddy? Good question. Cancelling one digital ID scheme does not create a bottomless Treasury vault, a vault that in that case was never costed anyway. £45 saving on your electricity bill sounds pleasant, but costs hundreds of millions of pounds, 80-odd-p a week, and that's before bills are going to go up anyway. So we have a problem. Then, of course, there's other things. You can talk about bus fares. Same problem there. We'll lob a quid and we'll make sure it's a £2 fare. Then, of course, there's defence, housing, infrastructure, every other shiny announcement. It seems Eyelashes Andy appears to be governing by invoice. Make a pledge now and worry about the payment later. AB is on the HP with bells on. And then, of course, there's his fixation with the so-called North-South divide.
The job of Number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the Southwest, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the North East, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the North West. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down.
Right, OK. He has Manchester. The Manchester building has been sourced and nearly ready to go. It just needs some desks and stuff. Oh, and some staff. Oh, and hundreds of millions of pounds of extra money. Number 10 North, because apparently Britain's central problem is insufficient prime ministerial office space. This is regional politics turned into theatre. Let's just ask one obvious question, courtesy of Damien, one of our producers here. Did the UK become more united when Scotland got some devolution? Or Wales? Or Northern Ireland? Did that unite us in any kind of obvious way? And who asked for this? Of course, some towns have been neglected and investment is grotesquely uneven. But the idea of one prosperous south floating above one impoverished north is simplistic nonsense. It's utter garbage. There are severe deprivation areas in London, in Kent, in Cornwall, just as there are enormous areas of wealth in Manchester, Cheshire and Yorkshire. The real divide is between thriving places and abandoned places, but often within the same postcode. Burnham romanticises geography because it suits his brand. Britain does not need two number 10s. It needs one government that can count. But Andy Burnham reckons he's got your back.
I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
We need to be better. We will be. Great. I think JFK and Churchill can rest easy in their graves, knowing that orators like Andy Burnham are on the loose. Let's get a word from Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, regular with us on the show. So here we are, day 2.5?
Something like that. When did he come in? Saturday, Friday?
Monday.
Well, that's when they started appointing the cabinet.
Yes, well, he became officially the Prime Minister, didn't he, on Monday? So, but, I mean, there's a couple of questions.
And they've already had their first scandal.
They've already had their... I think you said their first scan for a second. We should be able to scan governments, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Like an all-over body scan for where all the bear traps and problems lie. And there's going to be many with this, because firstly, he's dividing the country. I want your thoughts, by the way, on the north-south divide. Where is it? Can somebody point where it is? How do you feel it tangibly? Is it an ache in the shoulders? Is it some kind of itchy foot? Is there a sense when you walk out the door and you sniff the air and go, it's all right here in Scunthorpe, but I just know I'm divided from Canterbury in a very, very unjust and unfair way?
Anything north of London feels north to me.
London. See, if you go to Chatham in Kent or go to Dungeness in Kent, areas that I know well, then people will tell you exactly the same story as your man on the doorstep in Scunthorpe or Manchester or the Wirral or anywhere at all. The exact same story. What do they know in Westminster, what's going on down here? There's no difference. So what's the whole, we need to somehow get regions breathing, regions glowing with more bureaucracy, parliaments, and he said hope in every postcode, didn't he? He wants a parliament in every postcode, I think.
Hope in every heart, growth in every postcode, something like that.
Something of those lines.
Lots of words and very little detail on the policy
to back it up.
From him. I mean, look, there clearly is an issue with the so-called Westminster bubble, where politicians don't understand what is going on in places outside of Westminster.
But why would they not understand that when most of them don't come from Westminster? In fact, hardly any of them do.
Well, some of them...
I mean, you've got some London MPs. They are there to represent London, of course.
Like Starmer.
Like Starmer, like Khan.
Exactly. So there is that. But also, I do think it can sometimes be the case that, yes, you may have grown up somewhere outside of London, but then as soon as you become an adult, you move to London, you become a career politician and you never really leave, then you're not really keeping up with the times. You're not really following the public mood in these places.
So you're very much Team Burnham, are you, Chloe? Is that what you're telling us?
I'm not Team Burnham.
Chloe Dobbs is a socialist, everybody.
No, stop.
What happened to you?
Don't be so insulting.
Marxist Chloe.
I'll accuse you of defamation
appearance
in a minute if you keep calling me a socialist.
So what?
So I think that there is that issue, but what is the solution to that? Is that spending a load of money creating this number 10 North and having all this complication of, I mean, we don't really know how it's going to work, of MPs in the middle of, and civil servants in the middle of the day having to hop on the train back and forth. Surely they won't allow Burnham to just go on the train the way that security measures are now, so he'd have to be shipped in some expensive car up and down all day, every day. I don't think that necessarily is the answer. First of all, it's just actually listening to people, MPs listening to their constituents properly and bringing that into the meetings, bringing it into the cabinet meetings, but also it is not every single day, but on a fairly regular basis, going and meeting people in these different parts of the country. You don't have to have this number 10 North. And also, it's not just North versus South, right? I'm from Cornwall. That is somewhere that is outside of London, that is not in the north and has the same kind of issues of deprivation and not being listened to that other parts of the country, like the north, may say they suffer from. So, yeah, I think he's wrong to paint it as north versus south. It's, say, Westminster versus anywhere outside of Westminster.
You're from Cornwall. Let me just make a note of that. I didn't know about the Cornish thing. Just a second. Odd ball. So, would he not be better just to move the whole of Parliament to Manchester and then have done with? Because we wouldn't have the argument then, would we? Because he's not making...
Then they forget about those of us in the south.
But that's what I mean. It's ridiculous. Why can't you have a parliament and just go, here's the parliament? So, but they would do away with that kind of what they know in the south and all that business. Stick it. I don't care. Move the whole bloody parliament to Manchester. Knock down half a Deansgate and lob up a parliament there. You could do one quite quickly. He could live in that new office building he's just announced, so he can get all his nice kind of IKEA or John Lewis stuff in there, nicely furnished. We'll pay for all of that, Andy, don't worry. And that's where Parliament is. Because his arguments don't seem to be... They're not intellectual arguments. They're not based on... he has the Barnett...
Nothing that has come out so far from him is intellectual.
Indeed. What it seems to be based on is a feeling. It's a feeling. This is populism, And we know that he's not the only politician that practices that. He's saying, you're not being represented by them down there in Westminster. All this pejorative after pejorative, mucky language after mucky language. Get in the bin, Prime Minister. It's just a case, move the whole thing to Manchester, and it will shut him up on this one.
But, I mean, we've got such we've got such a beautiful parliament here. When you've seen videos of them talking in the Scottish Parliament, how ugly it looks, and over in Europe, the MEPs talking, the old clips of Farage. We've seen how ugly it looks. Unless he can build something like the Palace of Westminster there, I don't want it moving to.
I would say that M&M store in Leicester Square needs a bigger premises. So lob it over there.
Or at least it will smell nice when you go in. Because they have like M&M air freshener.
Yes,
the M&M
they do,
store.
Which is an awful thought, isn't it?
This is probably where we're going to get accused by the viewers of living in a London bubble, because this is inside chat about the London M&M store that they might not know about.
Neither of us are from London, and that's the funny thing. It's great that we have a capital. We shouldn't apologise for the capital. It's where the Parliament is. It's where Buckingham Palace is. It's where most of this... It's got to be somewhere. It does make sense. We already have lots of hubs. We have very, very big bureaucratic county councils. We have very, very big local councils. That's all being cut down as well.
And every MP has an office in their constituency, and the constituents can go to their MPs and email them any time.
You've got parish councils. We've got so much representation.
I don't understand I never can get my head around what every single one of all these different named councils does. Why do you need a city council, a county council and a parish council? There can't be that many jobs to go around.
Well, this is happening, I think, all over the country. So Kent, I can't remember how many councils there are in Kent, maybe... How many councils in Kent, Finn? Maybe 10? I'm just guessing here. There's going to be 4. So they're getting it down to 4. So they're going to be bigger regions. There's 12.
That's still a lot.
So there's 12. It's now going to be 4. Okay. So a quarter of what is... a third of what is already there.
And is that a reform policy?
Well, that makes it... That's doing the very opposite to what Andy Burnham's saying, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a bit more...
What are we going to do about this, Chloe Dobbs? That's what I want to know.
Well, maybe Andy Burnham will try and reverse it, but it seems like common sense to me. I'm a big fan of the saying, too many cooks spoil the broth.
Yeah.
If you've got 12 different councils having and a local MP having a say as to what happens in Kent, how on earth is anyone going to decide on anything and get anything done? There is a balance to be found somewhere. I'm not suggesting that we should have some sort of dictatorship-like rule where you just have, Andy Burnham or whoever the Prime Minister is making all the decisions for everywhere. Of course there should be a balance, and I do think that there is a benefit to there being local knowledge and the system where you have local MPs, local mayors. I think that can be useful at times. I mean, the only downside is that in cities they tend to vote Labour, so you end up with Labour mayors. But still, on the whole, I'm not against that. But the idea that everything should be broken down so that, I don't know, every single street has a different council and a different opinion.
Well,
it would just be completely unworkable.
How far do you take it? I do, I understand the argument. Apparently, we are the most centralised country in the Western world. So I hear. Now, I don't know.
How do you
whether
measure
we are
that,
how do you measure it? I don't, and there's not an equivalence between every single country, but let's assume that is true. So that might tell us something, that maybe things could run, maybe there is room for local decision making where it isn't being done now. But we know we've got Scotland is devolved, Wales is devolved. Are we a much closer, nicer, cosier, together collective?
No.
Of course we're not.
There's another good saying: you give them an inch, they take a mile. You give them a little bit of independence, and they say, oh, well, we want full independence. We don't want anything to do with you. And hence we've had the SNP campaigning for independence for all these years, and it had to, luckily in a referendum they didn't get their way, but all of that time and effort focused on that could have been spent on actually just cracking on and making Scotland a better place. I think you talk to, I haven't spent any time in Scotland, but anyone Scottish that I speak to is absolutely appalled by what the SNP have done in Scotland on areas outside of independence, be it the NHS, the schools, the drug problem, etc. And the same will go for if Andy Burnham, all time and money spent on one project is time and money that could have been spent on another project. You've got to think about opportunity cost and get your priorities straight. Is all of this devolution, should that really be a priority when he could be prioritising something else that actually is a priority for voters? I don't think voters are calling out saying, oh, we desperately need more devolution, we desperately need more.
Well, that's the thing.
Civil servants in our local area. They might want to be listened more to in their local area, but it doesn't have to be the way that it's different.
Correct. And you can end up in this kind of scattered country where everything is everyone's divided from each other by these new bureaucrats. And you stop and think, firstly, we're a country the size of a postage stamp, goddammit. I mean, we are a small, small place. We've already got, between Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and West, we've got 4 big administrative bodies, all those county councils, all those local councils. I mean, goodness me. And he wants to put more of those in place. And at the end of it all, somebody will inherit this and go, are we a closer country? No, it's costing us a lot more money than before. Here's a good point. Ronald, Newcastle upon Tyne, says, Scouse middle-class Fabian Andy Pandy thinks Manchester is the north. It's the Midlands to me, says Ronald. Exactly. And I've told this story before, just before we go to a break, Chloe. When Holyrood opened in Scotland, I remember, and apologies if you've heard this 10,000 times, we were on air that night and we were talking about it, and I took a call from a woman in Dundee and I said, you've waited years for this to happen in Scotland. You must be delighted with today. What do you make of it? And she said, what do they know down there in Edinburgh about what's going on up here in Dundee? There you go. Yep. The problem started again.
Exactly.
0344 499 1000. Couple of questions just to kick off with on this. Is Andy Burnham dividing the country rather than somehow uniting it? Secondly, how is he going to afford all this stuff he's talking about? What is your genuine assessment of what you've heard so far? Lines are open. This is Talk. Some breaking news. 8 men have been charged with rape and child sex offences as part of a grooming gang operation in South Wales. They've been charged with more than 30 offences. According to the CPS, the charges relate to 8 victims who were children.
Well, let me start by giving comment on Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. She's a stupid, idiotic sycophant.
Anne Widdecombe was murdered, the most high-profile murder in Britain for many, many decades. She was murdered because she supported the reform agenda.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes from Graham, who says, I'm from the north and now live in the south. The south is really London, so I think it's the end of the commuter lines that dictate the south. That's possibly true. I mean, I'm kind of from the... I was born in the north. I was born in Scunthorpe. A little look of envy on Chloe's face there.
I was just saying you hide your accent well.
Well, I was
Can't
like
really tell.
2.5 when I came down here, so it's quite hard to... I did hang on, apparently, as a toddler, I hung on to it, apparently, until I was about 2 3/4.
Oh, really?
Until I was about 4. I had a northern accent.
OK.
Well, don't sound so disgusted by it. It was a lovely...
My stepmom was horrified when my little brother, who they live in Hull.
Well, just the arch nemesis of Scunthorpe.
Yeah. He was at primary school there, and then he started to pick up a Hull accent, and my stepmom was horrified and was like, right, we've got to take out a second mortgage to send him to a private secondary school because he can't possibly have this Hull accent.
I mean, Hull is a different animal to Scunthorpe, frankly. If you look at it in kind of supermarket
I don't
terms,
think I've been to Scunthorpe.
Supermarket terms, Scunthorpe's Tesco, Hull is Londis.
OK. OK.
It's the best I can do.
I don't want to insult anyone listening from Hull, but it's it's a bit rough on the edges.
A lot of good stuff came out of Hull. The bridge, for a start.
Yeah. Which many people
takes you to Scunthorpe.
Which many people toppled themselves over, very sadly.
Oh, that's a pleasant
good
thought to dwell
aquarium,
on.
the deep. Good aquarium, good shopping centre.
Yeah.
And a migrant hotel by the train station. Lovely old hotel by the train station.
This is why...
Turned it into a migrant hotel. When you come off the train from work late at night, you're a young woman, you have to be greeted by all the migrants at the migrant hotel outside.
When Chloe applied for the job for the I Love Hull campaign and didn't get it, I think we've worked out what went wrong there somehow. Let's look at Andy Burnham's spending then, because he's telling the Cabinet to find cuts as spending pledges grow. No, I mean, let's just get this out of the way. This wasn't a reshuffle on Monday, was it? Because this was a new government, essentially, a new government. OK, they got their manifesto, although he's talking about what's it called, a circuit breaker? He wants a circuit breaker on things. Does that mean leaving the manifesto, parking the manifesto and doing other things?
So many different buzzwords from him, and we just don't know what it means.
And then he keeps making TikTok videos with that strange grin and those eyelashes.
Yeah, but at least they're better than Starmer's TikTok videos, because those were excruciating.
Yeah, but this is, I think, going to become that very quickly in a different kind of way. Anyway, he's told the Cabinet to try and take a good hard look at their budgets. They've been mounting questions over the scale of his public spending commitment. So in 72 hours, he's announced 340 million quid's worth of investment to end rough sleeping, 850 million plans to cut energy bills, and the restoration of the £2 cap on bus fares. Darren Jones, previous head honcho in Number 10, has already, as we discovered yesterday, come out the traps and said this don't add up.
And that was just talking about this cut of the 5% VAT on energy bills. That's apparently going to save us, what, 42 quid a year. That's one of the smaller ones of the pledges. He's already talking about putting Thames Water into special administration, inching towards nationalising the utilities. And I mean, some people have estimated that it could cost hundreds of billions to nationalise the utilities, end rough sleeping, cap the bus fares, potentially lift the personal allowance. This is all going to cost a heck of a lot more than just that reduction in the VAT on the energy bills. And that already is something that he's put out and lied to us and gaslit us and said, oh, it'll be funded by scrapping the digital ID. I'm very grateful that they have scrapped the digital ID, and I think you have to say hats off to the Together declaration for putting so much pressure on them to drop it, because I think that will have had an impact and have swayed that decision. But
it's been parked, hasn't it?
I mean, if you look at the headlines, it's like Darren Jones reveals that digital ID was unfunded. No, we knew it was unfunded. You probably remember when there was the budget, there was all this talk about digital ID, but there was nothing in the budget for it. And the Home Office were told, and the reason why it was under the Home Office's remit is because we were told this was the thing to fix illegal migration somehow. No idea how that was meant to work, but they were just told find it within the budget you already have. So i.e. they've just got to cut something in order to pay for it. So, I mean, the lies are starting already, and then all this other stuff, we don't know how it's going to happen. And he's saying to all these departments, oh, you need to find cuts, but there's not really any detail there as to exactly what it will be. The main thing they need to really tackle, right, is the welfare bill. And Andy Burnham already said he's not willing to make any crude welfare cuts, which probably means none at all. And given that there's definitely a move from Starmer to him and his cabinet to the soft left, I highly doubt you're going to be seeing that welfare bill cut. So there's already talk of putting up the top rate of income tax from 45p to 50p. And I mean, I would argue that that is a break from the manifesto, and he doesn't have a mandate to go for income tax. I mean, he might claim that people earning that much are not working people, but they're clearly going to work.
He's going to put a circuit breaker in, though.
A circuit what? And that means he's got a mandate,
got me circuit breaker. That's what he's going to do.
So you press an off button, press it back on again.
How are you going to do that,
on the lights
Prime
outside
Minister?
Downing Street, and then he decides that's a circuit breaker.
That's all you need, a circuit breaker. You do loads with those things. They're great. Halfords sell them, apparently. Two very quick stories. We've got to be really quick on this. Former PM Keir Starmer. Do you remember Keir Starmer? Keir Starmer, yes, once promised that hotels housing asylum seekers would be gone by the end of the Parliament. We've been following, of course, the Crowborough story from the start. Migrants quietly moved into a former army base at night. Plans for up to 540 men. Now locals are taking to the High Court claiming the decision was made unlawfully and without proper explanation. Same problem, different building. Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer promised.
I want to end asylum hotels by the end of this Parliament. Well, that's what our manifesto commitment was. No, I know. And therefore I've said to the system, to the relevant departments, I want to see that brought forward. I want to shorten that. As soon as possible, but no longer the end of Parliament. Bring it forward. I want us to close hotels. I think over coming months you'll see evidence of that.
Aren't you going to miss that voice?
I am.
They're going to close the hotels. Are they? Are they? I mean, if you just put people somewhere else, that's not... The problem wasn't the building. The problem was the amount of people within them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been talking a lot about how the Westminster bubble is completely out of touch with what people think. And I mean, this is the perfect example. They think when they hear online that people are concerned about migrant hotels that, oh, that just means they don't want them in a hotel and they want them in a different type of building, right? No, they want them out of the country and not coming in the first place. And so I think the Crowborough residents, who have brilliantly put together this Crowborough Shield group and got the funding for it, I really hope that they're successful. And they're saying that the government has used with the with military base, you have exemptions to not tell the public about what's happening there. But this isn't military activity, but they've kind of taken advantage of that, is the argument that they're making.
Which is a bit bizarre, frankly.
Yes, it's clearly
you
playing
can't
with...
utilise that.
The Home Office's strategy when it comes to migrant accommodation has always been to just keep it a secret from people, because they know if they let people scrutinise them, as they should be able to, that everyone's going to say they don't want it.
If they build a block of flats on what used to be, I don't know, the American Embassy or something, I don't think you can claim that no one's allowed in there because there was once an American embassy. So we're going to use the same rules and regulations as we did before. Very finally, an apology from Wes Streeting today. Yes, he's got into some trouble after a hot mic caught him. They always call it a hot mic, don't they? It's just a mic. It's just a mic.
I'm sure if you touch it, I'm sure you touch it, it was really hot.
Caught on a hot mic. Just a mic, sexy mic. Yeah, magic mic maybe, I don't know. Where are we going with this? Anyway, so what happened here? There he was, the new Defence Secretary, joking with Shabana Mahmood, still the Home Secretary, about the early release of prisoners, telling her that the new Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, was the enemy now, who wants to let them all out. Have a listen.
Oh, are you? No, he's the enemy now, isn't Justice Shabana? No, he's not.
Who's that bloke? That's what I want to know. Who did the big laugh? I don't care about this. It was just a stupid remark, slightly based on Kenneth Clarke and Theresa May. People have lost their minds over this. He's being insensitive to victims. No, it's just a comment among colleagues. You know, we're a free speech world. People say things. He's just joshing with his new colleague.
I think the reality is that behind closed doors, which they thought they were here, people do have a chuckle. And I think, you know, one thing that I've learned talking to people who've been through difficult things is that they all make jokes because it's almost like a coping mechanism, making light of a bad situation. It just wasn't a good look when it comes at the same time as the victims of, you know, the rapists that are being let out early feel as though the government is not listening to them at all and doesn't care about them. If they had
it's a bit rubbish to be caught saying it, but I don't think the idea was...
If it was the case that the government was doing a lot to really listen to these people, get them in, find out their opinions, find out what their concerns are, then maybe it wouldn't have been as much fun. But it looks like it was a good thing that's happened, because we then found out this morning, Andy Burnham announcing that he's going to review the early release scheme. And it might be the case that this scandal, this blowing up, is what caused him to come out with that.
Well, if Eyelashes Andy can make it happen, we will all be behind him on that one. Listen, Chloe, we hit the clock, but thank you. Say hello to Hull next time you're there. Chloe Dobbs with us here on Talk. Over to you. We've got two questions up and running. Number one, is Andy Burnham dividing the country? He's talking about uniting it. I think he's doing the very opposite. And how can he afford his plans? What are your current analysis, assessment of what appears by any standards to be a fairly generous package of expenditure? How is he going to pay for it? Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. So, 7 cabinet ministers from the northwest, 4 from Yorkshire, just 2 from London. Burnham's government shifting power north exactly as he promised. But shifting power is easy. Paying for it, of course, is another matter. His first cost of living pledge fell apart within hours yesterday as being unfunded, and his own spokesman couldn't say how his wider spending plans, running into hundreds of billions, will be financed. Let's get a word firstly from Michael Crick, journalist and author. Afternoon to you, Michael. I mean, this is a national scandal, frankly. If you wanted to go out with your roving mic of doom, chasing politicians around constituencies, you've now got to get on a train. I mean, how careless and thoughtless is that?
Well, as a Mancunian and a big United fan, I'm on the trains to Manchester all the time.
Of course.
And in fact, I'm speaking to you right now from the northwest. But he has got the figures a bit askew, I think. He's got to be very careful here. Only 2 MPs from London, very strong Labour area.
Yeah.
Only a couple more MPs from the south, where Labour won lots of seats at the last election, particularly along the south coast and places you'd never imagine Labour to have MPs. And of course, they will be desperately hoping to keep those seats at the next election. So he's got to be careful about this. And if I were him, I'd shut up talking about Manchester, because actually in the north of England, there are lots of people in other places who don't really like Manchester. In Leeds and Liverpool, even in Bolton, they don't like Manchester.
Yeah.
So got to be careful here and think it through a bit. I mean, this is the problem with Burnham overall. Too little thought has gone into being Prime Minister. I mean, normally a Prime Minister is either elected at a general election, having been in opposition, having sat round the shadow cabinet table with your colleagues for several years, working out what policies you're going to put to the public at the election and then carry out in office, or a Prime Minister comes from within the current cabinet, having done generally a really important job, one of the big 3. And of course, Burnham has done neither of these things for a very long time. He's come from Manchester, I was going to say nowhere, but come out of the blue. Being mayor of Greater Manchester is 10 times easier than more than 10 times easier than being Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And I think one of Burnham's problems is he's just been far too liberal in making promises, in floating ideas, in suggesting certain policies like increasing the tax threshold at which you start paying tax earlier in the week. Now we're told that's not going to happen. And too liberal in promising people jobs. And as a result, a whole load of people have been thrown out of the cabinet, many of them, but largely, it seems to me, out of an act of revenge against people who supported Keir Starmer. And many of them were very good ministers. And it's just stupid to act like that. So really, Burnham is going to start having to be a grown-up politician. And there are a lot of people involved in politics and who study politics who've long been worried that Burnham is too much of a lightweight, really. You've got to be really, really clever and really, really have a feel for politics to be Prime Minister.
I mean, there's a couple of... You raised some really good points here, Michael. And I wonder, when Keir Starmer came into office and we were all kind of slightly fooled, even those of us who'd done this job for a long time and you've done it forever too, thought, he's obviously got some sort of Blair Brown kind of plan ready to be unleashed, and it turned out didn't have any plan at all, other than the fact that Keir Starmer could say, we're not the Conservatives, and that seemed to be the plan. Of course, that was never good enough, and I wonder whether Andy Burnham has fallen into the same bear trap here by saying, I'm not Keir Starmer, and that's good enough. I can smile a bit, I make those little TikTok videos, and that's going to carry me through, but that's going to wear thin pretty quickly.
I know, we often see it in life, don't we, that people react against something, and so they swing totally the other way, far too far the other way. And I think maybe there's a danger of that with Burnham. Too late now. His party has elected him, and he's going to be Prime Minister if he wants to be, until the next election, or until there's a cabinet revolt that overthrows him. But I forgot what the other point I was going to make here. He's made exactly the same mistake as Starmer, and we now know from even Morgan McSweeney has admitted recently that they didn't put enough thought into what they were going to do into government, and I suspect that Andy Burnham put even less thought. It was all about, how do I win the Labour leadership, and how do I become Prime Minister, and how do I, make out I'm going to do this, that, and all sorts of goodies and good vibes, and persuade all sorts of people they'll be part of the team, and we'll sort out the detail later. And now he's having to sort out that detail. Thankfully, he's got a summer where he can quietly do a lot of that, and he doesn't have to answer to the House of Commons. I think he should have done, but he's not going to have to do so, and he doesn't. He's got a bit of time, but it's a matter of weeks he's got, whereas normally you think about these things for years and years.
Well, Starmer had half a decade and didn't really come up with very much, did he?
No.
What do you make of this then, Michael. Ruth in Worcestershire just sent a message saying, and many people have made a similar point. I thought power had already been devolved to regions by having mayors and the like. Didn't Andy know this? I mean, you know, we've already got that sort of, you know, Scotland devolution, Wales, Northern Ireland, wherever we want to slice it, mayors in places we never had mayors 20 minutes ago. So what is it he intends to do on that front? Is it, you know, is it sort of the Barnett formula with booster rockets? Because as far as I can tell, the only political ideology behind this is well, it's almost theatre rather than genuine intellectual ideology. It's populism. It gives a feeling rather than any kind of concrete underpinning of a firm plan.
Well, to start with, we've only got mayors covering, I don't know what the percentage is, roughly half of England. I mean, there aren't any in Wales or in Scotland. So half of England and all sorts of parts of the country haven't got a mayor at all. They've still got traditional local government. The other interesting thing is that lots of places had a referendum on whether to have a mayor, and clearly the idea wasn't popular in a lot of those places because they voted against the idea. And in some places, like Stoke-on-Trent, they had a mayor for a while and decided they didn't like the idea, and so they had another referendum and rejected it and abolished the post of mayor. So it's not that populist. The second point I'd make is this: if you're going to devolve, if the Treasury is going to say, right, we're not going to decide in future in great detail how you spend your money in this particular area. You can do that for yourself. You know, take Staffordshire. Staffordshire, you've got to decide from now on. You and your mayor have got to decide how you spend the money in future, and we will just give you a lump sum. The problem is, supposing the person that runs Staffordshire, the elected mayor, turns out to be a crook or just incompetent and either steals the money or wastes it. Is the Treasury going to say, well, hard luck, the people of Staffordshire will just have to pay a lot more council tax? Or is the Treasury going to say, oh, dear, I'm sorry to hear about that. Well, here's some more money to pay for the losses. Yeah. You've got to have standards whereby you make sure that these mayors operate properly. Now, so far, we've been lucky in that we've had some good mayors like Andy Burnham and Andy Street in the West Midlands, and there haven't been huge allegations, although there have been problems in both Liverpool and on Teesside. And the bodies that used to sort of regulate this sort of thing and keep an eye on it, like the Audit Commission, the old Audit Commission, well, they were abolished by the Conservatives. How are we going to make sure that this money from the Treasury to all these, in the devolved way, to all of these mayors and councils is going to be spent properly? And that is the danger.
It is indeed. Michael, listen, we will speak again. Lovely to have you on. Always good to gauge your take on these things. Michael Crick, journalist of many decades. He's followed them all around many times over, from the top to the very bottom. Michael Crick, journalist and author. Let's get a word from Valentine Boboc, senior economist at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good afternoon to you. I mean, it's like I mentioned at the beginning, it's a giveaway like confetti at the moment. It's like wherever I look, there's something else free coming my way. A Labrador puppy for every family. We await that announcement at some time this afternoon. I'm sure it's on its way. Buses, energy bills, the list goes on. Can he afford it?
That's a very great question. Andy Burnham is certainly not beginning his premiership in a very enviable position as far as prime ministers are concerned. We do have a very high level of national debt. And the one thing that is even more concerning is that we have a very expensive level of debt management in general. I think the third most expensive item on our budget, below things like welfare and healthcare, is debt management, debt servicing, or paying interest on existing debt. This is not something we can do infinitely. It's not something that is necessarily manageable. Yeah. And it turns out that successive governments have failed to deal with this. We are not increasing revenues by growing. We are having big struggles with economic growth, which is usually the pleasant way of getting revenues. The unpleasant way of getting revenues is taxation, and we seem to be relatively happy to do so as long as it's concealed enough in some sense, as long as it's not explicit, as long as it's a small tax here and there or a quiet increase. And we have very big trouble doing the other side of consolidation, which is reducing spending. Oftentimes, ministers can acknowledge that reducing spending is necessary, but the backbenchers and other MPs vote against that.
Sure.
Those are the only two ways to sort of deal with these things, which is raising revenue or reducing spending. Ideally, you would be doing a little bit of both through a combination of growth and sensible spending cuts, and then you get twice the benefit. But we're not really in a position to do either of those, really, at the moment.
Indeed, and of course he has, as we understand it, he's told cabinet ministers to take a hard look at their budgets. I mean, I would have imagined, even by the woeful standards of the last administration under Keir Starmer, that looking at the budget is something they've spent a lot of time doing almost on a daily basis. And every time, as you alluded to it there, a suggestion comes up, welfare, which was never even a meaningful cut to welfare, of course. It was just a slight slowing down of the increase. It was simply rejected. And we've got all these big packages around, Thames Water potentially taken into to be nationalised, potentially could cost $2.5 billion. We're also looking at other areas that Andy Burnham is likely to be spending money on, whether it's an energy bill, whether it's a bus fare. All of these things add up. Somewhere the money literally has to come from somewhere. So you'd like to think he's not stupid. He must have said this with his eye on something.
Yes, ideally. I think one of the things that recent governments are struggling with is the fact that they can recognize certain types of issues and diagnoses. For example, many people discuss our problems around economic growth, or they discuss our problems with controlling spending, but they also have additional priorities which contradict this. So, for example, we can be very keen on the concept of devolution and saying that we should have a more decentralized state, that we should have more competition between regions when it comes to things like taxation or regulation, but there are other things that they simply care more about. For example, we do like to think about devolution as a good thing, but we also want equal outcomes between regions, and this will require vast amounts of central intervention. It is a similar thing here. We want to say that we want to control spending, but there will be some sort of alternative priority that pulls against that, and the alternative priority usually wins. So I suppose it remains to see if we're in a similar situation now, if they will be able to rein in the sort of like secondary impulse and tackle on the problems they describe.
We will see. Valentin, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Valentin Bobak, who's the senior economist at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Over to you on that one. Where the hell is he going to get the money from? What's your just general assessment as to where that might come from? And the division of the country. Nothing wrong with having greater representation. It does cost quite a bit. I would argue at the moment, of all the things, it's a bit like the kind of... Well, digital ID was the obvious one, wasn't it? When they bought... Why were they even going there and looking for cash to bring something in that was clearly against the backdrop of pretty tough economic times? Why would you even bother with that? Lots of the net zero stuff, in fact, most of the net zero stuff, you could say, all right, we'll come back to the windmill argument in maybe 5 or 6 years. But in the meantime, we can lob all of that money into defence and we'll go well over the 3% by 2030. We'll be up to 5% at this rate. Then we can buy some stuff and do some stuff and have your free bus fares, free Wi-Fi that actually works for the whole country. Goodness me, you could do loads and the aforementioned Labrador puppy will appear on everybody's driveway by 6 p.m. If you did something substantial, maybe. But at the moment, we're not seeing that. Save a few quid on stationery at the Department of Health to fund all of this. And this is just day two. 0344 499 1000. How quick did they get that coach badged up, by the way, with £2 bus fares on? I bet that was a right result, wasn't it, for whoever badges up coaches, getting a phone call about 6 p.m. and someone saying, yeah, can you badge an entire coach up with a big, big ad for £2 bus fares? Yeah, do that. When do you want it? What, sort of September time? Is that good? No, 10 o'clock tonight. Sorry? Name your price. Bus badging company. Someone would have earned a few quid out of that one. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. Some breaking news. 8 men have been charged with rape and child sex offences as part of a grooming gang operation in South Wales. They've been charged with more than 30 offences. According to the CPS, the charges relate to 8 victims who were children.
Well, let me start by giving comment on Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. She's a stupid, idiotic sycophant.
Anne Widdecombe was murdered, the most high-profile murder in Britain for many, many decades. She was murdered because she supported the reform agenda.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one comes in from Paul Hamilton and says, Ian, how dare you try to defend Mahmood and Streeting? What about the victims of the murderers and rapists who are being released early? The victims those two are laughing at. Burnham should have sacked them immediately, but he won't because he's laughing as well. Well, no one's laughing at he's taking the pee out of his colleague who's going to be inheriting the early release programme. It's not hard to understand. And, of course, there is precedent for this, even prior to Keir Starmer. The reference being to Kenneth Clarke and Theresa May, when he was seen as the Justice Minister that released them all. It was a well-known Westminster phrase. So the victim of the gag, it's not even a gag, is it? It's just two colleagues talking, is the victim, if that's the right way to look at it, is his colleague. Ah, you're going to be releasing them all now, aren't you? And it's as simple as that, just after the guy had the job for about 90 minutes. It was quite easy to understand. I can't get outraged about that. Let's talk to Daniel in Epsom. Daniel, what have you got for us? I know you're a good, hard, lefty socialist, so, you know, this must be a great day for you. How's it going?
It's going good, but this Andy Burnham thing, I think there's only a certain amount of time to, you know, pleasantries and warm words that will only get you so far. And he keeps trying to solve problems that we haven't asked him to solve.
Yeah,
so,
good
so
point.
For example, everyone I know is complaining about the cost of living. They're complaining that immigration from the third world is destroying the fabric of our country. It's ruining our home. Illegal immigration is putting our people in danger. And law and order is probably at an all-time low. Theft's basically been legalised. And his response to that is, let's move a parliament to Manchester and let's ban people from sleeping homeless, from being homeless. Now, what you should really do, Andy Burnham, is listen to our primary concerns, law and order, immigration, the economy, and solve those. Do the things we've asked you to do, not the pleasantries and warm words that you want to drop in.
Yeah.
You know, I think we need to remember that governments work for us. And if those are our priorities, that's what he should be doing.
Isn't that what he's trying? And I'm not saying this with any compliment to him, by the way, but in his world, isn't that what he thinks he's doing? By, you know, he's doing all these kind of slightly, I mean, I think they're quite cringy, to be honest, these little TikTok-y Insta videos of him, you know, with that grin on his face. They've now added a little effect at the beginning, which is meant to look like he's just turned the camera phone, there I go again, the camera on again. Himself, and it just, you know, he's smiling away. All right, everybody, it's me again. You know, guess what? You know, here's another one for you. It's all of the, it's just a little bit, you know, trying too hard to be, oh, this is what you want from a Prime Minister, isn't it? Someone who's nice and on your side.
Yeah, but that'll only get you so far.
Correct.
The reality is, if to solve some of our problems, you need to be bold and brave in government. You need to leave the ECHR. You need to have a diplomatic incident with France. You need to do bold government that we haven't had for an extraordinarily long time. Making little TikTok videos about banning homelessness and You know, it's just we're going nowhere fast. This kind of just, I'm a genuine down-to-earth guy. He might be, but it also means that he won't solve any of the key problems in Britain today. Law and order will continue to go down. Illegal immigration is putting our people in danger. We're being systematically replaced in our own homeland. You know, something urgent needs to be done. And these little pleasant TikToks and nice little sayings, and it's not going to fix any of our problems. And the quicker we all realise that and get a general election and vote reform, the better.
It's a bit twee, isn't it? I get you. Daniel, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. I've been asking for a long time for a politician that kind of shoots from the hip, speaks from the gut, as it were. And once in a while, I know that when you are that kind of politician, you can sometimes put your toes into hot water. But it's always refreshing when someone is off-piste and passionate. And, yeah, they might muddle their words or they might, not necessarily get everything in the right order. But, boy, they mean what they say. I think he's trying to do a sort of version of that. And I'm just waiting for the next... yeah, it's me again. It's kind of those videos... that's going to wear really, really thin, really, really quickly. It's just a bit, behind the cushion on the sofa moment. That's what he's up to. Is he doing it for you? I think he's sort of dividing the country, saying something about, I'm spreading the love and the joy and hope in every postcode and all this stuff. I don't think that's really the Prime Minister's job in that sense, to be honest. I mean, create the terrain to live in a legal, Daniel alluded to that, a law-abiding society with a legal framework where people can make money, and that in turn can encourage entrepreneurs and businesses to grow and thrive, and therefore industry and commerce follows. It's pretty simple, really. I ain't heard none of that from Andy. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed talk. Welcome back to the home of common sense. So Andy Burnham's new cabinet have been accused of dividing the country on day one, with 7 ministers hailing from the northwest alone against just 2 from London. Do you know, I've never ever looked at a cabinet and wondered where each of them are from, ever. I couldn't even tell you where most cabinet members represent in their own constituencies. This has sparked a little accusation, of course, of favouritism towards his own Greater Manchester backyard. Your thoughts on that? Is Andy Burnham, in trying to unite the country, in effect dividing the country? Meanwhile, he's ordered his cabinet to find spending cuts after just 72 hours in office, despite already announcing hundreds of millions in new commitments, rough sleeping, energy bills and bus fares. There's all manner of other things you could throw in too. Critics warning some of these pledges remain entirely unfunded, and there's a slight problem. And villagers in Piddington in Oxfordshire have voted overwhelmingly for their own independence referendum in protest at Home Office plans to house 1,250 male asylum seekers nearby. This happens as separate legal action accuses the department of unlawfully sneaking migrants into a former army base in East Sussex under the cover of darkness. It's all kicking off in that department. We'll have more on that in just a couple of moments' time. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Now, Murph says, Ian, I don't think Mahmood and Streeting should be totally vilified for their joking and laughing, but it does show the contempt they have for us as a whole. If someone were to comment on someone's race or sexuality, these two would jump up and down with rage. But making a joke at this point is OK with them. Hardly the lovely party, is it? And I hear what you say, but I just think that, you know, a new colleague has just got a job like 2 hours before, and they've gone, mate, yeah, you're going to release them all now, aren't you? I don't think the gag is about releasing prisoners. The gag is this is the bloke that's got to deal with it. This comes from Anne, who says, your favourite fan from Nottinghamshire. Thank you, Anne. Do you think Andy and crew are the perfect analogy I heard this morning? It's like rearranging the decks on the Titanic. Yes, exactly that. What a lovely time to be alive. Good point. Thank you for those. So, Piddington. Do you know of Piddington? If anybody's in Piddington, by the way, I'd love to hear from you. This is a village in Oxfordshire, want independence from the UK over plans for 1,250 asylum seekers, all male. Meanwhile, Crowborough says the Home Office broke the law, housing migrants in secret. Robert Bates says the government is now taking legal action just to stop him exposing the truth on migrant crime figures. Robert joins us now. Robert, good afternoon to you. I should announce, by the way, you are the Research Director at the Centre for Migration. So what is happening here? It's a big mixed bag.
It is, but the government seems to be getting legal challenges left, right and centre because it has frankly lost control of the immigration crisis and seems to be doing nothing about it. On the referendum in Piddington and in the legal challenge that the residents of Crowborough are launching, I think what they both show actually now is something that has been simmering for quite a few years, which is this sense that actually we've got these civil servants and these ministers in Whitehall who aren't really too concerned about the social costs that the Channel crisis is inflicting on the country as a whole, and that they're being put upon, and that actually these cloth-eared individuals are treating their communities, their homes. Many individuals in these places will have been sort of generations back in the same place, and actually they're feeling like the transformation that is taking place in their neighbourhood has been done without any consent, and they are trying to push back in the most sort of engaging, and in the case of the referendum, the most sort of very British way that they can. And I think actually just shows the social contract has broken at this point. People are now pursuing legal challenges against it. They're trying referendums. But actually, I think these individuals in Piddington and Crowborough are almost in a way fortunate that the place where these asylum seekers are going to be housed is so visible and it's in one fixed place, and they can therefore lob all their efforts against that. Actually, what you will see in many other towns and many other small communities is that the asylum seekers are being dispersed in HMOs, where it's a lot less noticeable in that regard, but you nonetheless feel the change socially.
Yeah, I don't know what the legality or the pursuing of the result of an independence referendum is. I'd imagine, I'm going to take a punt here, but I would guess, Robert, it doesn't really come to much. It's you know, symbolic maybe, but I think it's quite powerful. I love to see this, you know, that residents are in action. I don't think this is some sort of reform area either. I think it's largely a Lib Dem neck of the woods.
Yeah, absolutely. It is even now creeping up onto the doorstep of those Lib Dem voters who perhaps weren't as acutely aware of this crisis a few years back. And actually, I do think this is something that is only going to grow. We have seen the government really actually trying to avoid a lot of scrutiny on this issue. Let's not forget that it was trying to cancel local elections this year in areas that have seen a huge uptick in the number of illegal migrants being housed in their area. And actually, I think when you consider the huge contracts, the multi-year contracts, the billions of pounds that is being splurged on the asylum system, about 5 billion every single year, the lack of vetting, the near daily slew of cases that we do see of crimes being committed by these individuals. And you have to kind of think, what more can we do to make the government listen? Actually, the Labour government came in primarily because the Tories have failed so badly on the Channel crisis and were housing individuals in communities. And now Labour have come in and actually really, if anything, poured more petrol on the problem. And I do think, as I said, the social contract in this country has been completely obliterated by this issue.
I think what is overarchingly disappointing, just to go back to Andy Burnham, is that I don't think he's uttered a single word on immigration in the few days he's been in power.
No, he hasn't, and it was very conspicuous during by its absence during the by-election as well. What we do know, whilst he was Mayor of Greater Manchester, is he wanted Channel migrants to have the right to work, a huge pull factor. He also wanted to make it easier for new arrivals to have immediate access to the welfare state, social housing, and so forth. So that is perhaps why he has been a bit quiet on that front, because he knows that his background on this, it would be a political problem for him. I think the reappointment of Mahmood as well indicates that actually he isn't coming in with any new plans. He's instead really going to just allow her to continue with her plans of safe and legal routes, the sort of unwinding of her settlement proposals as well. I don't think he wants this to be at the centrepiece of his government, but whether he likes it or not, it will be.
Yeah. Let's move to Crowborough then. That's not a piece of advice. That's just merely the story. And that, of course, is where famously now the former army barracks in Crowborough were taken over to accommodate migrants there. There's almost a weekly protest. My other half was driving through there the other day. We got some family in that neck of the woods, and she wasn't really aware of the fullness of the story. Couldn't believe this protest, and it's pretty much a regular thing. But we understand the High Court has been told that the Home Office decision to house illegal migrants in a former army base was made unlawfully. What's going on there, Robert?
I think what we're seeing is the Home Office is actually running out of options, such as the number of individuals that are in the asylum system. It is really struggling with the accommodation issue, and that was in large part why they ended up going down the route of using hotels. Of course, Labour came in and promised to close hotels. The problem is they've not actually thought about where they will then house these individuals, and this is why they are jumping on sort of desperately almost unsuitable sites such as Crowborough. I do think there is a space for using former army sites and RAF bases and so forth, but only if they have fences around them and the individuals within them are detained. And I think that actually would go a large way to calming some of the concerns that people are feeling, rather than having a large number of young men who haven't been vetted from culturally distant nations wandering around your streets in the middle of the night or sort of loitering outside schools. Actually, these individuals are kept within humane camps that sort of make sure that they aren't intermixing with the community who do have very justifiable concerns. And I think the Home Office, unless it starts to radically reduce the number of asylum claims that we are seeing, it's still running near record levels, and it is going to continue to face pressure from other communities when it does try and get its hands on inappropriate accommodation, such as in the Crowborough site.
And your own experience, tell us more about this. What's going on? There you are, Robert Bates, journalist and research director, and suddenly you discover the government are unhappy about what you've been trying to find out.
Well, exactly. So what I've been trying to get my hands on is what would be considered the most comprehensive data set on migrant crime going back to 2018. It would be providing information not just on sort of top tier offences, but actually letting us know how many serious crimes have been committed by migrants, your murders, your sort of importation of weapons, your supply of drugs, your rapes, all these heinous crimes. But actually, rather than provide that information.
And Robert has frozen on that point. We will try to just get him back on, because it's a really interesting story that he's tried every method available to get Labour to reveal the real number of serious crimes committed by migrants in Britain. And now they're taking legal action to block him from doing that. We are going to just try and get him back on. Just while we do, let me read a couple of messages from you. This from Sue in North Yorkshire says, "Afternoon, Ian. I find Andy Burnham's TikTok videos quite nauseating. It's the cocky, arrogant facial expressions and the cheesy grin. He's only been PM since Monday, but I'm already having to mute the sound or turn my TV off when he appears. I find his mannerisms so very irritating, particularly when he does that kind of almost humble praying stance, when he puts his hands together. It's kind of slightly Buddhist-like, you know, the position, and sort of nods to the crowd. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for your support. I love you all." It's a bit of that. She goes on to say, "He reminds me of a cocky second-hand car salesman. I think the more we see of him, the more voters will dislike him and Labour will dive again in the polls." I sense a bit of that. I think he's come in with a bag of gimmicks that will go so far, maybe a couple of weeks. And then I've got a feeling he's going to get rumbled quickly. Robert Bates is back with us. Robert, we were talking there about your attempts to try and get crime data committed by migrants in Britain, now legal action being taken against you. Tell us more what's happening.
Yeah, sorry, I think I disappeared for a second there. So what we're really seeing here is the Ministry of Justice attempting to overrule a decision that the UK's own data watchdog has made, that this information is in the public interest, and actually it is something that should be published and should be readily available to the public so they can know about what's going on in their own country. Rather than accept that ruling, the Ministry of Justice has decided to lodge an appeal in the courts, challenging this decision, saying that it doesn't want to publish this data. And I do think actually, given this is a Labour government, if the data was to be published, it would open up some very awkward questions for them, because I do think a lot of people are now thinking, when they see this story, what are they hiding? It will open up very awkward questions about whether we need to be increasing the deportation of foreign national offenders, whether we need to be introducing visa bans for certain nationalities as well. And that is a conversation the Labour Party simply doesn't want to go down.
So what happens next with this then? Is this in the middle of a battle, a court battle?
It is, yes. So it's very early stages. We're sort of ascertaining exactly how it will take shape, when the dates will be, and so forth. But we're launching a full-throttled campaign to shine as much light on this as possible. We're bringing in legal advice to make sure that we're able to fight this to the very best of our ability, and actually make sure that the people's voice is considered during this debate. It's not sort of pushed into an arcane-sounding tribunal, which gets bogged down in technicalities. And actually, the very essence of why this data is so important for our democracy is made loud and clear during that process. And I do hope that actually we will be able to have some success on that front, because I know that this is something that actually would improve public policy. It would improve the relationship and between the electorate and the government. And actually, I think it is something that would help this country move forward towards a more sensible migration policy.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, good luck with it as well. Robert, thank you. You've done some great work on this. I know Robert Bates is Research Director at the Centre for Migration. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. This one in from Mark in Runcorn says, "I think there is an easy answer to the migrant crisis. Hold a referendum on who is for and who is against illegal immigration. Whoever votes for illegal migration pays all the costs incurred. Simple. Let's see how long they keep voting for it when they have to pay for it." It is interesting how this... I can't see why this will be a divisive issue, given the economic arguments, if nothing else, don't stack up. Scott's in Oxford. You're not far from Piddington, I understand, Scott, yeah?
Yeah, I'm actually in Bicester, which is Oxfordshire. So it's Bicester's 4.9 miles. It's a sort of the nearest main market town to Piddington.
Yeah, with a big outlet centre, of course.
With the big outlet centre, I don't think they're going to be particularly happy either, because that's the entrance from Piddington. That would be the entrance into the town via
Interesting.
Bicester Village.
Yeah. So what are you making of this then?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's all been done underhand. I mean, apparently they've been planning this since last November, but it only really arose about, 3 weeks ago that we actually got told about it. And it's almost as if the decision's already been made, although they're saying it's not. But the proposal is that there's going to be initially 1,250 single males coming to the village. Now they're going to not be contained. It's going to be sort of
come and go as you please.
Access, as you please. Now, there's not really much in the village and for them to do, and I can see why the villagers themselves would be particularly unhappy because it's very close proximity. It's a very small, peaceful village, but they're probably going to be coming into the town. That'll be what will happen. I mean, if you've got 1,250 people. Young men who are going to be bored. There's going to be nothing for them to do at the camp. They're just going to come into the town itself, and that's going to create all sorts of problems. If you've got 1,250 men with a little bit of pocket money who are bored, it's not going to be good for the town.
And it's only got a small population, I would guess, Piddington. Tiny.
I think Piddington's about 600.
Yes. So you've got 600 people.
They're going to be overwhelmed.
And you're going to triple that population with 1,200 asylum seekers.
You are. And I mean, we've already got, actually, just fairly close by, there's a prison. And there's also an open prison, probably about 7 or 8 miles away. So
you've got a prison, an open prison, and now an asylum centre. What did Piddington do so wrong?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, we've had a couple of protests in Bicester itself over the last couple of weekends.
Yeah.
And they've been very peaceful and very calm. They have been quite led by Reform, and that's not saying it's organised by them, but you did feel a presence of Reform and a couple of other groups there, but it was all very peaceful and calm. Our MP is a Lib Dem MP, Callum Miller. To be fair to him, he's been quite good at raising the questions and objections in the House and to the relevant departments and keeping us updated. But unfortunately, he decided not to attend the demonstrations with the general population because he felt it was being led by Reform, which isn't true. It's not led by Reform, but I do admit there was a presence of Reform there.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? If you had, even if only 1% of 1,250 people were wrong-uns, and I'm sure most people, I've never had any truck with the idea, I mean, the idea that every single boatload of people is full of rapists is clearly stupid as well. But we just don't know who they are. That's the problem. So some might be there, so we're playing this kind of Russian roulette. But if you've got 1,250 and 1% were bad uns, that's 12.5 criminals you've introduced into a village with 600 people. That's quite a lot.
Well, that's true, but it's not just... there will be an element of criminals, I'm sure. I mean, it would be naive to think there isn't. We certainly don't know anything about the individual persons. But the other thing is, even if you take those bad uns out, there's still 1,200 young single men who will have absolutely nothing to do.
Yeah. So just from a social point of view, it's a massive error, right? Anybody could see that.
It is, but you see, we're in a Lib Dem controlled council here who signed this pledge for welcoming refugees, I think a year or so ago. But now it's coming. They're dead against it.
Because I would imagine this was a central government decision, not a local decision. Yeah,
not a local decision.
Well, listen, let's keep in touch if we can, Scott, and get any further details as this kind of emerges, and we'll make sure that Faith and Finn keep your details and stick you on a database, which obviously we share with the Secret Services as well. But really happy to have you on, Scott. Scott in Oxford, who lives near Piddington, and how the migrant camp will affect them. And he made a really good point there, didn't he? Which is, it doesn't matter, even if you took any criminal element out, you've got 1,200, so a village of about 600 people, and you're introducing 1,200 young men to that village with nothing to do, where they've got pretty much zero income, so they can't spend anything, they can't do very much. English isn't their first language, some won't speak it at all. I mean, at what point do the government not understand what a problem looks like? I mean, how far do you have to go to illustrate what a problem is? There's a perfect crystallised example in this Piddington story. We need to keep our eyes on this, because it's almost beyond belief that our elected representatives would be up to this kind of lark with no consideration for locals. That the only option they had when these people floated across the channel on a rubber boat was to say, let's move 1,200 of you into a small village with a population of 600. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. I know it's a well-worn phrase, but it's true. And Tony in Cheam says, afternoon, Ian, I think Burnham is the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. There you go, straight out the traps early to us. Love it. Lines are open, this is Talk. Some breaking news. 8 men have been charged with rape and child sex offences as part of a grooming gang operation in South Wales. They've been charged with more than 30 offences. According to the CPS, the charges relate to 8 victims who were children.
Well, let me start by giving comment on Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. She's a stupid, idiotic sycophant.
Anne Widdecombe was murdered, the most high-profile murder in Britain for many, many decades. She was murdered because she supported the reform agenda.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's a great and a very obvious point from Kay, who says these places like Crowborough and Oxford are so hypocritical when the councils are the ones that love immigration. I mean, it's totally bonkers. I don't understand why there is such resistance to this, and it's only really down to the idea that if you resist this level, these heady, unacceptable levels of immigration, then you run the risk of being accused of all manner of things, either as an out-and-out racist, which is just bonkers, and of course you could be a racist, but that isn't the that's not really the common that's not the common problem here. But a xenophobe, an uncaring, you're not worried about people's plights, etc. The list goes on. And governments, and particularly this new one, because it is a new government really since Burnham took over, the fact that we've got to 2.5 days into his time as Prime Minister, or I suppose you could say, yeah, 2 and a bit days. He's not once mentioned immigration. He's not said, stood up there with one of his smiley TikTok videos and gone, and by the way, oh, only me again. He could start like that. And a TikTok video of him saying, I've seen what's going on. It's unacceptable. Nobody voted for this. Absolutely nobody voted for this. I'm doing something about it. Watch this space. It'll be sorted by 6. Nothing. Not in his DNA. Doesn't give a hoot. This from Chris, who says, glad you're better, mate. Daniel made the points very cogently. Burnham needs to understand that if we deal with the major concerns we all have, it will help solve the things he wants to address. Deport the millions or so of illegals, move the homeless into those properties, deal with criminals and take the cost of crime out of our pockets. Get people off welfare, incentivise them to work with tax breaks, more money in government coffers. Why not pay for people on welfare to work? It makes more sense than paying them to do nothing. Burnham is divisive. There is no hope in our hearts, only the feckless and lazy, says Chris. Brilliantly put. Yeah, if he came up with something big like that, we could all get behind it and go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Paul's in Burnley. What have you got for us, Paul? North-South divide. What's happening? You're in the north. Well, unless you're in Middlesbrough, then you're in the Midlands. But you take the point.
Yeah, you're asking the question, Ian. Will devolution divide the country further? I'm gonna flip the question, and I'm gonna ask you this: has the completely disproportionate amount of billions that have been poured into London made the rest of the country any more prosperous?
Well, you could also extend that question. Has it made the average Londoner any more prosperous? Because I think the millions you talk about, you could largely say, is probably eaten up in admin and bureaucracy, right?
Well, before I came on, I just did a quick Google search and looked at and asked the question, how much of infrastructure products and large engineering projects, what's the distribution? Not just for years, Ian, for decades.
Okay.
And it's 40 to 50% have gone into the one city that's London.
Yeah. Is that because it's the capital city, though?
It isn't, and I've also looked at some other figures in comparison where it shows the wealth, and they base it on lots of different factors, the spread of wealth in a country like Germany, and it's far more thinly spread, for want of a better phrase. And I just want to make this point as well, if I can. There were calls to electrify communication at the rail line.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say electrify Andy Burnham for a second. Good. The rail line from where did you say? Birmingham to?
No, from one side of England to the other.
Oh, right,
Not to modern, not for a new line, nothing new, just to electrify it.
Yep.
And the money couldn't be found for that, but money could be found for for Crossrail and Crossrail 2 and the Thames Links barrier and the Elizabeth line. But to get from one side of London, money was found. But to get from one side of England, the north of England, no, we can't possibly do that. We're going to have to spend money on England, my friend.
But is that because I don't believe for 1 second, because you're right on all the numbers you quote there, Paul, and I not that I can personally, I'm not intelligent enough to go, yes, I'm aware of all those numbers, but they sound about right from the kind of stuff I've kind of glossed over in the last few days and over time when we've talked about this. Would it still be argued that we have, you could say we have a capital city problem, although I think Paris might be in a fairly similar place. You're right about Germany, because they have this sort of canton thing, don't they? It's divided up in a different sort of way, and they're different administrative blocks, do things differently, and that's always been the case. London, I think, is a peculiar case, a bit like New York in a sense, that it's so flipping big, it's so huge, everything is there, that it's not always its fault. So it's kind of become a victim of its own sort of size in that, well, we've got to put these structures in because we've got 8-9 million people living, I think it might even be more now, living in this one place. Big head offices, they're not all there, but loads of them are. It's the capital city, the airport, the biggest, one of the, I think the busiest airport in the world, in Heathrow, is right next to it. So you have all of these considerations, and the capital city has then got to try and accommodate that. You know, you put a big airport there, which has been there and it's grown and grown, then you've got to somehow have train lines and infrastructure that feed to and from that airport, and obviously the Elizabeth line that you mentioned will be a great example of that, which seemed to go on for all of my lifetime building this thing.
I get all that, Ian, and because it's the capital, it will have, unique things. But if you just look at the per pupil spending per pupil, London is typically 10% more than, and up to 15% more than children in other regions. That can't be fair.
But is that to? I don't necessarily think that's to educate them to a higher level.
But if you take the amount that's spent, and it's decades worth, then the facilities and all the compute, it adds up. And I'll give you, if I can give you two analogies about London-centric this country, and one of them involves Kevin O'Sullivan.
Yeah, he's behind everything.
The first one, I read an article by a journalist, and she was born in London, and she lived in London, and she worked in London, but she was posted up to Manchester, and she went to cover a story in Blackburn, and when she tried to get back to the office, she realised that the trains were something that were old stock from the southeast of London, sort of hand-me-downs, right. And they were like something from the Eastern Bloc chugging out diesel, and they were 1 an hour. And she remarked on the fact that she'd done a very similar story in Reading. And to get from Reading back to London, there was one every 10 minutes. There were new trains. They had Wi-Fi. They were air-conditioned. And she said, until you move out of London and you move out of that area, you don't realise how lopsided the country is and how overindulged London is. And my second point regarding Kevin, he was talking about moving the BBC to Salford, and he said, how preposterous is it that if somebody from London wants to go to do an interview for 10, 15 minutes up in Salford, they've got to get all the way up there, they've got to get off at Piccadilly, they've got to get a taxi, they do the interview, and they've got to trail all the way back down there. Not for 1 second did Kevin think that if somebody's in Glasgow, or if somebody's in Plymouth, or if somebody's in Sunderland, or somebody's in Sheffield, they've all got to do that and do it in London.
And do the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly the same thing.
That would be true, although... it depends what you're asking somebody to do. I've been at the sharp end of BBC largesse when it comes to flying people. I got flown to Belfast twice to appear on a debate show, me and 2 others, which was just completely ludicrous. But that's maybe a different kind of story. You're absolutely right. Of course there's an infrastructure problem. My point, overarchingly, though, Paul, is that it's not because a load of accountants have gone, let's give it to London because we live in Surrey. It's been more about the infrastructure and the system and the airports and the head offices and where West. I would happily, Paul, move the whole thing to Manchester, the whole of Westminster to Manchester. And it might at least address some of what you say. Listen, you've been brilliant, though, Paul. Thank you for that, and thank you for the research as well. It's a great call, and Paul's bang on with his figures. The reasoning behind it, I guess, is the next interesting debate. 0344 499 1000, just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. So, as we were discussing a little earlier on, an apology from Wes Streeting today after a hot mic caught him joking with Shabana Mahmood about the early release of prisoners, telling her new Justice Secretary... her new Justice Secretary, is it now? Wow, I think that'll be news to Alex Norris, won't it? Yes. Well, Mr. Norris will maybe defer to her now. I would, because she's apparently a bit tasty when it comes to giving out and barking an order. Nonetheless, Alex Norris was the enemy now who wants to let them all out. Let's have a listen to what happened.
Oh, are you? No, he's the enemy now, isn't Justice Shabbat? No, he's not.
So that's what happened. Let's go to work with Harry Miller, former police officer, founder of Fair Cop, of course. Nice to see you again, Harry. Look, I suppose like any what they call a hot mic moment, those concerned, in this case, Wes Streeting, the new Defence Secretary, and the Home Secretary will say, well, look, you know, we weren't making a joke about prisoners, we were making, or victims, we were making a joke about, we were taking the pee out of Alex Norris because he suddenly, in the last 2 hours, inherited this problem and it's all going to be down to him. So the butt of the gag was Alex Norris. Now, that's probably true, and all workplaces have some dark humour, and, yeah, we all joke about things when we're not in public. But the timing, I suppose, is what's really kind of banged them into the frame of this story.
Yeah, that's right. The problem here is not, as far as I'm concerned, with the joke. As you rightly point out, all healthy workplaces have cultures of banter. All of us have engaged in dark humour at one time or another. Very few of us get caught by a hot mic. The problem here is not with what was said, as far as I'm concerned. The problem here is with this two-tier humour that there is, because these are the same people who would jump on you or I if we said something, if we were caught saying something that they didn't like. That's the problem. They've ripped the heart, the cultural heart, out of the workplace. They've encouraged the prosecution of people who say things over a cup of coffee. They've destroyed, for instance, the culture of a police station where coppers would get round a cup of coffee and they would banter, they would talk, they would share their dark jokes about what they'd seen, and it's now become a criminal offence to do that. So what you can't do, you can't be leading the charge against cultural jokes, against dark humour, and then get caught doing it yourself. That's the issue here. I don't think it's the actual joke itself. Good for them, as far as I'm concerned. They are demonstrating some basic humanity. The problem is with their rank hypocrisy and the way that they go at the likes of you and I, regular, normal people, for making similar dark jokes, dark comments, etc. They would prosecute us as quickly as they would look at us. And that is the problem here, Ian.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. If you look at how many... I mean, God, I've lost count. I mean, this is your bread and butter, Harry. But I wouldn't even know where to start if we started unearthing examples of what you've just said, because there are so many, and many of them, you know, not caught on camera accidentally, filmed in the cold light of day. You know, cops showing up, knocking on doors, having a pop at people, people being fired, letters being sent off, viewers, listeners demanding firing, sackings, MPs getting all animated about this kind of stuff. It's the world they've kind of created.
It is absolutely. I mean, you look at Nicky Campbell, who I think is one of the few good DJs in the BBC. You know, the BBC are the propaganda wing of not just this government but previous governments as well. I saw this week that just because in reported speech he used a P word, the P off word, in reported speech, he's been forced to apologise. I mean, what kind of world do we want to live in where even feeding back reported speech can get you into trouble? This is the problem. Let's remember why the reason that I'm talking on your show right now is because I came to public attention back in 2019 because I retweeted somebody else's limerick. And the government, the College of Policing, the Home Secretary, Humberside Police Force, they spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds digging into their position, saying that they were right to investigate me for that.
Do you think, Harry, can I just ask, do you think that limerick is in the Black Museum now, sort of on a wall somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I keep saying...
Next to Crippin's bag or something, you know.
It wasn't even a limerick. It was a piece of crappy feminist verse. Maybe it identified as limerick. Who knows? But there we go. And this is the problem. It's hypocrisy. They are trying to enforce standards upon the British public, which they themselves know that they cannot keep. And this was, of course, the mark of a Stalinist government. Everybody knew that you couldn't keep Stalin's rules, but it didn't matter because they would give themselves a pass. They would give themselves a pass. And that's what's happening here. They set up these rules in order to persecute and prosecute and keep us quiet. And they themselves have no intention whatsoever of keeping them.
And, of course, it does come right at the same time that we hear that two of those jailed for the manslaughter of PC Andrew Harper, who died the most horrific death by being dragged a mile by a piece of rope that his leg got attached to on the back of a car. Two of those responsible, Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole, are now eligible for early release. And this is extraordinary because they were only jailed in 2020, I think it was. The incident happened in 2019. They were passengers in the car, but they are going to be due for early release, which seems just an extraordinary short space of time for such a horrific crime. Lissy Harper, who of course is Andrew's widow, said it was deplorable that we've reached a point where releasing prisoners early is even considered acceptable after it emerged, of course, this news of their release. I mean, it just beggars belief, doesn't it?
It absolutely beggars belief. Now, you know, all power to her, to Andrew Harper's wife. She pushed through what is now known as Harper's Law. So had those absolute lunatic monsters, had they committed that crime post, I think, 2022, they would have been given automatic life sentences, because it's now mandatory life sentence for anybody who murders someone who is part of the emergency services, and quite right too. But come on, they've been sentenced to, what was it? I think 16 years or something like that. They ought to be serving. They ought to be serving all of it. I mean, absolutely every last bloody month of it. They need to be serving it, not half of it, not less than half of it. With this new early release scheme, you serve a third, and boom, you're out.
I mean, isn't there criteria for who they choose for early release?
There is some criteria, but it's not retrospective. So when if you committed it now, different rules would apply. And one of the problems with early release is this: that now, if you're given a sentence of less than 12 months, you are automatically going to have your prison sentence suspended. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that the vast degree of recidivism, reoffending, if you like, is from people whose sentences are around about 12 months. So what we're doing, the courts are just going to go, we're giving you a 12-month sentence, but here's the thing: you can crack on and continue with your crime wave right now, because we're not even going to put you in prison for 12 months or 8 months or even 4 months. You're released, it's going to be suspended. Yeah. So this whole thing needs re-looking at. The problem with the repeated governments, not just the current one, but the previous Conservative governments, is this: that governments are not bothered about victims until public opinion eats into their political capital. It's only at that point that they start giving a toss about victims. They start giving a monkeys about the rest of society. It's only when it eats into their political capital that they begin to think, this could now affect us, so we better do something about it. Now, at least Andy Burnham seems to have the brains to have realised that this early release could dent his honeymoon period with the British public. And if he plays his cards right with his new Attorney General and his new Lord Chancellor, then perhaps he will do the sensible thing and he will intervene and say no early release on this one. And if he could do even better by looking at the 2026 bill about early release, etc., and suspended sentences, and put a stop to it. That's what needs to happen. We need to stop crime, and we either stop crime at a societal level so that crime doesn't happen. Well, that's a massive task, quite frankly. But the other thing that you do is you build prisons, and you keep your prisoners in there until they are no longer a danger to society. And that is where we're at the moment. We need to be building prisons. We need to be putting baddies inside the prisons and keeping them locked up until either they're too old to be a danger to society, or until they've shown true reform and repentance. That's what needs to happen.
Absolutely bang on. Just finally, Harry, on a slightly lighter note, do you remember the limerick?
Yes, I do remember the limerick, yeah.
Because I've now got it written in front of me here. You don't mind if I read this out, do you?
Your breasts are made of silicon.
Your breasts are made of silicon, your vagina goes nowhere, and we can tell the difference even when you're not there. Your hormones are synthetic, and let's just cross this bridge. What you have, you stupid man, is male privilege.
That's right. That's right. The crime of the century.
That's a hate crime right there.
The police and the government said that by quoting that, you were encouraging a future genocide. So there you go, Ian.
I'm trying to work out who was meant to be the victim of that.
Well, there wasn't one, was there? There was no victim. There was no victim. What the logic was that by expressing that opinion, by retweeting that limerick, what I'd done is I'd put a giant flag above my head that said that I am a future genocidal maniac against the trans community, and unless the police intervene at the earliest possible date, that's where we're going to be. Harry Miller is going to be leading the next trans Auschwitz. That was their logic. And I'm not making that up. That's what they said at the High Court, that unless they'd intervened with that limerick, that I was on my way to committing genocide. That's why...
Who the hell with a straight face in the legal world stood up and was happy to say that in a public courtroom? I mean, man alive.
Well, I know. It beggars belief, doesn't it, Ian? It beggars belief. But I think what they did was they fell for the sunk cost fallacy. They'd made their decision, they'd done their thing, and rather than saying, you know what, we got this wrong, we apologise, this is ludicrous, they don't do that. There's an inability amongst politicians, amongst police officers, chief constables, to say, I think we got that wrong. We're terribly sorry. And I don't know why. It's as though they think that, they will burst into flames if they admit at the earliest point that they've made a mistake. So what they do, they just dig in and make it worse for themselves, because the High Court turns around and says, no, by the way, Chief Constable, you're acting like the Stasi, the Cheka and the Gestapo. Harry Miller wasn't even in the foothills.
Yes.
What are we doing here? Yeah. But they don't learn, Ian. That's the problem.
Indeed. I mean, even just that phrase that you were arrested for reposting a limerick. I mean, man alive. And, of course, that's news we've discussed many times over the years. Happy to continue speaking with you, though, Harry. It's always common sense stuff. Thank you, mate, for that. Harry Miller, former cop as well, and founder of Fair Cop, who found himself in the cuffs, in the dock, over that. Yeah, it was something somebody else wrote and he reposted, and they said all hell has broken loose. Arrest that man, get him, bang, take him, because he's going to start some kind of mad, what did he say, a revolution, was it? A genocide. Little Harry. I say little, not as an insult, he's not that little. Lovely Harry. The next genocidal maniac of our times. When people talk about those great genocidal maniacs of history, Harry Miller's name will not be there, and it was never going to be there either. Funny times, eh? 0344 499 1000. We've got more calls from you on the way. Loads to get through on this. We've got a couple of questions up and running. Is Andy Burnham dividing the country despite his intention, apparently, to unite it? Not sure he's achieving that, although we've had some great calls on why things do need addressing. And how can he afford his current plans? There's a lot of expenditure already, and we're only on, kind of day 2 and a bit. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one in from... no name given, actually. Here's an idea for Burnham. Move all Heathrow freight to Doncaster Airport. Massive developments there, loads of space, bang central in the country. Huge boost to the north, and then no need for a new runway in the south. Just redevelop the freight terminal. I wonder if anyone's ever flagged that. Is there a kind of logistical reason, or is it just a case of, well, it's too much hassle? Is it that? I don't know. And I guess you'd then need the... See, it's the infrastructure that then follows, isn't it? You put all the freight to Doncaster, and a big percentage of that freight is going, a greater percentage, by far, is going south, then there is the answer, I suppose. I'm not defending that. I'm just simply saying that's probably what it is. And Paul says, I challenge Andy Burnham to appear on Talk to take questions from your listeners and viewers. Yes, we would like to invite Andy Burnham onto the programme, and we're on till 4, so we have texted him because we do have, obviously, you know, when you become Prime Minister, Boris Johnson never changed his number from all those years as an MP. It was curious. I don't know why he didn't. And Andy Burnham has received Finn's message, got a double tick on it, and he's just literally over a couple of bridges. And of course, when he travels now as Prime Minister, they close the... You know, you get here in about, what, 4 minutes, I reckon. So we're on till 4, Prime Minister. If you want to nip over for a chinwag, that really would be talking to the people. Right, let's do Voice of Doom. It's day 1 of a brand new... We haven't done it at all this week, because obviously Monday happened, and then I wasn't here yesterday. So it's a brand new Voice of Doom. This is the mystery voice, but it's political. You're looking for somebody who is either usually a politician, but if not, very, very obviously connected to the world of politics. You have one task, and that's to work out who it is. Have a listen.
And it was very disappointing.
Let's hear that again.
And it was very disappointing.
87222. Just message on that number. It's the only way to have a crack at this. 87222 if you know who this is.
And it was very disappointing.
If we get a right answer, then we reveal all in the next hour. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. 87222 if you can tell us who this is.
And it was very disappointing.
Someone must know. Someone somewhere knows. Who's that then? George is in Dundee. What have you got for us, George? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. Good to speak to you again.
You too. Far away.
It's regarding will devolution split the country even further. I think the perfect example you've got of devolution is Scotland, a wee bit Wales as well, but Scotland, where up until 1997, it was a fairly harmonious place to live. Everybody rocked on together, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Along comes devolution, and the country basically splits down the middle, and it's been an angry and agitated place ever since.
Yeah.
And it's an eternal question about independence or no independence. So devolution creates more problems, in my opinion, certainly up here. In the
I agree with you.
Ever.
And of course we had it with Wales and Northern Ireland, and the idea is for Andy Burnham to sort of put booster rockets on the idea and have similar things going on in other significant cities. He's going to start with Manchester. One would assume, you know, Newcastle, Liverpool would be obvious areas where you would bolster up the sense of, you know, independence. And I kind of get that. If you're in America, you know, in America, states in America are the size of our entire country, right? I mean, it's understandable. The size dictates you need something more localised. But I can only imagine after 5 years, we're not going to be more together. I think, as you just said, George, we'll be further apart.
Yeah, well, nothing has made me feel less Scottish than devolution and more British, because I don't want another 2-3 layers of politicians involved in my life.
Yeah.
And that's all I've got since devolution come along.
It's
ridiculous decisions
Yep.
and layer after layer after layer of bureaucracy.
Yep.
So the answer to your question is, I think it won't just divide the nation having more devolution. I think it will divide the places where the devolution actually comes in.
I think you're right. We did it, I can't remember what the number was, George, but a few years ago we tried to count up how many political representatives we have across the whole of the United Kingdom. So that would include Holyrood, it would include Westminster, it would include Wales, it would include Stormont. And then, of course, all the county councils, the city councils, the local councils, the parish councils. I can't remember what the figure was, but you can only imagine we're looking at jaw-dropping numbers.
Well, I've got, just for myself, I've got 8 community councillors, 4 local councillors, I've got an elected MSP and also 4 list MSPs, I've got an MP, I've got a European Parliament MP and 3 list European Parliament MPs. Obviously, we didn't have the European Parliament now, but that's what I had up until a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, Andy Burnham thinks you need a bit more representation.
Let's have a bit more, eh?
What difference will a couple more MPs make? George, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. Here's the new voice of doom.
And it was very disappointing.
87222, if you think you know.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the Afternoon Empire. It is indeed the home of common sense. What have we got? We are talking about Andy Burnham, his new cabinet. Of course, they've been accused of dividing the country in their attempt to unite the country. This from day one, essentially. 7 ministers, by the way, hailing from the northwest alone, if you want to look at it this way. Just 2 from London. I've never really thought about where cabinet ministers come from and how that represents things, because in their post as a cabinet minister, it doesn't really make the world a difference. But it has sparked accusations of favouritism towards Mr Burnham's own Greater Manchester backyard. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has ordered his cabinet to find spending cuts after after just 72 hours in office. I think it's about 76 now. Despite already announcing hundreds of millions in new commitments on rough sleeping, energy bills, bus fares, with critics warning that some of these pledges remain entirely unfunded. What's that all about? And as we've been discussing, villagers in Piddington in Oxfordshire have voted overwhelmingly for their own independence referendum in protest at Home Office plans to house 1,250 male asylum seekers nearby in a village that has only around about 600 people in it. Nobody voted for this. What the hell is going on? Details on the way. 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. This is Talk. This comes from Mark, who says, this is the first time I've ever recommended a genocidal maniac for a knighthood. It's a good point. I will recommend him as well. This, of course, is Harry Miller, our previous guest, who was reported to the police and arrested years ago now, back in 2019. Of us in less prosperous areas. Crowborough isn't a particularly prosperous area, by the way, like so many areas. And this has been up and running, what, for a couple of years now. It's not new. Thank you, Carl, for that. Lots to get through. 5 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, the White House is genuinely concerned, we hear, about Ed Miliband's appointment as Foreign Secretary. A senior Trump administration official says Miliband will be a point of friction in the transatlantic relationship. Given his support for green energy projects, Trump has repeatedly attacked Miliband himself. Didn't help matters, promising closer EU before barely mentioning essential alliance at all. The man is a half-wit. We know this. Let's speak to a man always across the stories. Michael Graham, US political commentator, publisher of Inside Sources. Michael, always good to have you on. I would imagine if you went round with a big clipboard on the streets of anywhere in the United States and showed a photograph of Ed Miliband, absolutely nobody would know who the hell he was.
So wait, so half-wit is a bad thing?
Half-wit is a bad thing.
All this time I thought people said I was spending half my time trying to be witty. I was kind of flattered by that.
Yeah, you thought you were nearly onto a full wit, almost.
Exactly. What the heck? I had no idea. No, people don't know Ed Miliband here. The only people in D.C. who know him know him because he called the president a racist, misogynistic, self-confessed groper, which is not a great opening with Donald Trump. I'll just tell you. That's not the way to warm him up.
Doesn't really
I don't know if you
work.
saw him in the White House yesterday with the president of Lebanon. The first time the president of Lebanon's been in the White House for about 20 years. And he said, Mr. President, it's an honor to be with you, such a great president. And Trump looks right at the cameras and goes, see, he knows how to handle me. And so Trump is not, he's not hard. It's not complicated. Just don't go around calling him a racist, misogynistic groper.
It was quite an extraordinary appointment. This guy, I'm sure you're vaguely familiar, Michael, with the details.
Yeah.
So he was previously the kind of net zero energy czar.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy that was going to put a windmill in everyone's backyard, and he wanted the whole place run as if we were still pre-industrial revolution. He didn't want cars and stuff, the greatest invention that brought social mobility to ordinary people. None of that car malarkey. Grab a horse or a mule or something to get around. That kind of he was there. He was an evangelist on this stuff. And here he is now as the Foreign Secretary, and managed in his first speech to make no reference to the special essential alliance between the United Kingdom and America, but did talk a lot about the EU, which sort of rather bears out everything we thought about this man. He also, by the way, I should say, tried to be Prime Minister and failed at a general election a few years ago.
I was going to say, I assume he'll have the same level of success as the foreign minister as he did as the leader of the Labour Party.
Indeed.
That's what you can look forward to. But, it's interesting because there are to me, I don't get this. I get people hate Trump, and so they just can't see past their Trump hatred. But there's so many opportunities here to both do yourself, countries like the Great Britain, France, etc., to connect with America, do each other some favors, get some goodwill, and that is a step into the Middle East where you can. Everybody hates Iran. it is amazing to me that the hatred of Trump has even eclipsed Iran, the whack job Islamist. They murdered 50,000 of their own people just a few months ago to stay in power. They've murdered people all over the world. They export terrorism. They murder people for being gay. They beat women for showing their ankles in public. And you'd rather have them than Donald Trump?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I'm not setting aside, the way that the Trump administration decided to go into war, kind of this, spur of the moment, no lead up. There are a lot of issues, I agree. But here we are. Why not step in, for example, and say, hey, love what you do with Lebanon. We want to help. We'll train Lebanese troops to, confront Hezbollah. We'll step in and help cut off Hezbollah supply. Hey, love what you're doing. We'll help, build other ways to get oil out of the Middle East and bypass the Straits of Hormuz. There are so many opportunities that would help everybody. And yet the number one stop is, well, but I can't be seen as helping Trump. And it just, I don't understand it.
It is. I mean, when they talk about, absolutely, when they talk about derangement syndrome and all the rest of it, I mean, sometimes it really is there, isn't it? I mean, look, you're allowed to not like Donald Trump, as you rightly said. And you would have been in this place as well when I've previously made comments about Donald Trump, and you get that criticism where people say, oh, you must therefore be a Democrat. It's no, there's loads of great Republicans I would have rather have had. And of course, there was, whether it was Ron or whether it was somebody else, over the years, there's been, bring me a Reagan type character, although I know that era is gone, but those kind of guys. However, you brilliantly articulate there, Michael, the curious nature that the head honcho, the Ayatollah, gets less shizzle than Donald Trump does. How is this even possible?
So look, I'm not the monarch of Manchester or whatever this Andy Burnham's nickname is, the Ayatollah of the North End, or whatever. I don't know what the hell, but I'm not him. I'm not Miliband, but being a dumb old guy who used to run campaigns for a living, I would look at this opportunity and say, okay, where's in the Venn diagram, maybe there's not a lot of overlap. Trump's so crazy, whatever, but there's some overlap, particularly having to do with everyone knowing that Iran, the current regime in Iran, cannot stay. They can't, whether it's this year or change. They're too dangerous. They have to go. And they are, it appears, in the process of leaving. The question is how long before they finally collapse. Why not step up and say, hey, here's what we can do to help the Iranian people, to help the free flow of oil, to help the principle of open access to the seas, and send a message to China and Russia at the same time, too, about open access to the seas. There are so many overlaps you could do if you could get past Trump. And I don't get any sense from Miliband that he's ever going to get past Trump. And so it goes to your prime minister. And, President Trump, as always, he used to bash the guy as an extreme left winger, which in America he would be. And then he said, now Trump is saying, hey, I had a great phone call. I mean, Trump is very transactional. And so this is an opportunity to do something small and helpful that you will get big credit for at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely right. So they had this phone call, apparently went all right, and Andy Burnham congratulated the president on America hosting the World Cup. So they did all the friendly stuff. I often wonder how those things work. A friend of mine worked in Downing Street, and he would be in on the phone calls with a previous prime minister. To Donald Trump, and he sat in on a number of these phone calls. And it's funny, these guys that, even when they're your friends, and I've never been able to get a single conversation out of him about what he was. You sign all that stuff and you go to jail if you breach it. I get that, but not even after a few beers would he spill the beans. But he did say that they were always amicable, sometimes animated, but amicable conversations.
May I say two quick things about? May I say quick things about the World Cup? Number one, keep your dirty third world kickball out of our country. We don't want it. Number two, I hadn't thought about this until I heard a short presentation by the head of the FBI, Kash Patel. He pointed out the volume, this was like having 720 Super Bowls, 19, coronations at Westminster. There were so many target-rich environments for terrorism, so many opportunities just for general crime, just unrest, etc. And we had no issues. No. And I think that there's two aspects of that. One is the vast majority of the people in the world, the vast majority of people the Western civilization, we have no issues. We're happy people. We want to go. We want to visit stuff. Go to the U.S. Walmart, stare at all the amazing glory. We want to watch the football game, whatever. But also that the U.S. we really have gotten so much better at security since 9/11. I think this was the result of 25 years. And it's a reminder too, by the way, to the people who think, well, I don't want to get in between the U.S. and Iran. You don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
Iran has two things: threatened oil and terrorism. And America has gotten so good at stopping their terrorism.
Sure.
We haven't removed, obviously terrorists only have to be right once and you have to stop them 1,000 times.
Yep.
But man, this is not remember when you had two events, it was 2005, you had two events in Great Britain, like within weeks of each other in July.
Yes, that's right. 7/7. And 21st.
Yeah, 7/7, exactly. I mean, this is not the 7/7 era. This is a new era where America in particular, I think the Trump administration and all of law enforcement should take a victory lap and say, hey, look, we carried them off and there were no issues. And given the tensions in the world and the hatred of Trump and Iran and blah, 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 pretty good.
Indeed, the filthiest, dirtiest, most violent thing we saw was the Argentinian football team. So, I think we kind of got away with it quite well, really. And it was just.
I don't know anything about there was some kicking going. I don't know.
Oh, they were absolutely outrageous. Can we have our Falkland Islands back, please? You never owned the Falkland Islands, you swines.
I was one of the 70% of Americans who vaguely knew that the thing was going on.
Yeah.
So I'm glad everyone had a good time.
Even when America were playing and Donald Trump got that red card overturned, I mean, did you not come back from work that day and think, I've got to grab some beers and some popcorn or fried chicken, whatever you guys do over there, all that kind of calorific stuff you love, heart attack menu on drip,
absolutely,
intravenously given when you wake up, all of that. Did you not come back from it and go, I've got to watch the match tonight?
So I was in Austria and Hungary about 3 weeks before the big games kicked off. And so I thought, after my experience, I thought it was hilarious. There's a meme going around the U.S. You win the World Cup and it shows the players coming out and President Trump's there and he's awarding them a window unit air conditioner. Go back to your backwards place in the EU somewhere. Here's something every American, we have them in our mobile homes. We have them, I don't know what you guys call them, the things you drive that you sleep in, the campers, whatever.
Yes, yeah.
What do you guys, that's a weird word for those.
Yeah, we call them, there's mobile homes, caravanettes, there's...
Caravans, that's it. Yeah, we have them in our caravans. They're sticking out of the window of our caravans.
Yeah.
And over on the, no wonder you guys got out of the EU. I don't blame you. Get out of there fast.
Apparently, more Americans watched the final show of The Price is Right back in the day than watched the World Cup. So there you go. That gives you a taster. And the guy only won a toaster.
But it was a nice toaster.
Yeah, that was never $70. It was always $94.
There are parts of Central Europe that are still waiting for that toaster. So, don't you mock me, mister.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. This is apropos nothing at all, but it just went through my head the other day. You get a lot of...
this is your empire, right?
This is my empire.
This is the afternoon empire?
This is the afternoon empire.
So you're now Ian Churchill? Is that what we're supposed to say?
That's more or less it. There's a Churchillian vibe to this thing here in afternoons. So, look, America's, you've got a nice lawn at your house, yeah?
Yes, I do.
Do you water your lawn, or do you have, do you water with your hose pipe, yeah?
No, so I have a sprinkler thing in the yard.
One of those things that does that, yes.
It comes out of the ground, it turns on and the little sprinkler heads pop up, like at a golf. You guys have, golf. You have golf. So like at a golf course. It pops up, sprays everything around, goes away.
Have you ever in your life on planet Earth, as an American, had a hose pipe or sprinkler ban?
No, we have heard rumors that there are places where they have bans on watering your lawn.
Yeah.
But if you want to see a return of the spirit of 1776, tell a bunch of suburban white people that they can't water their lawn. And I hope you're ready for pitchforks and fires and torches. That's not going to happen. It's like listening to you talk about getting arrested for a tweet.
Yes.
I mean, no joke. This is what people don't. I assume you saw the Twitter thing with Freddie, the guy from somewhere in Europe, and he was going around to America, and he's like, oh my gosh, look at the fried chicken stores. And oh my gosh, look at the rodeos. There was a thing during the World Cup. This guy, The thing that I wish he could transmit to those of you on your side of the pond is the cultural difference. We would not tolerate it. The idea that you would say to us, we're going to put you in jail because you posted something mean on Twitter. You would be in jail for trying to do it.
For trying to do it,
you're going to tell people, hey, I know you have water. I know it's in the ground. I know you paid for it, or you have a well or whatever, but you can't use it. I'm sorry. That's for countries that were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Well, indeed. I mean, which feeds back into this sort of statism thing with the hose pipes. So my region in the southeast, they're called Southeast Water. They banned the hose pipe ban came in about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'll come back to that. Yesterday, Thames Water, which is Britain's largest water company, that's the whole of the capital and a few sort of places nearby, they have banned households from using hose pipes. You can't fill paddling pools, water gardens, wash cars because of dwindling supplies after record-breaking, because it's been about 35 degrees every day for about a month. That's cooled down a bit now. But here's the thing. It's the reason I mention this, and it's because we had a message from Fafa who said, Ian, is there any update on your lawn? Because I had a new lawn laid about 2 weeks before the hosepipe.
Perfect timing.
Now, my lawn now looks like the Gobi Desert. I swear this morning, I swear there was a rattlesnake in there this morning. It was the sort of... I'm waiting for David Attenborough to turn up and make a documentary on the thing. This was a beautiful green lawn, the sort of thing you see on those lovely, the sort of at-home magazines. It was manicured and beautiful and brand new. 3 weeks later, it looks like this is a breach of my human rights, Michael.
It is. I agree. I should go to The Hague. Someone should go to The Hague for this. This is terrible.
Well, I'm hoping. Hoping I can push it in that direction.
I think you should treat the water commissioner in southeastern Great Britain the way that New York City Mayor Mondami wants to treat Bibi Netanyahu. Absolutely, throw him in the stocks.
Yeah,
take him to The Hague, put him on trial. That's the only way you're going to get justice here.
I think the water commissioner might also be Ed Miliband, but that's another story. Maybe that's just a rumour. Listen, Michael, it's always great to chat. Thank you. Have a great day. That is Michael Graham, US political commentator, publisher of Inside Sources. Thank you, Fafa, for that. I didn't get an exemption. Last year, the water company had an exemption if you recently had a lawn laid. You could still then water it, but they've done away with the exemption. And I know it's not dead, is it? If it rained for 2 weeks now, it would all come back. But it just looks pretty bloody grim. It now looks like... Because if you ever have a new lawn laid, for about 5 minutes, your lawn is the best lawn in your neck of the woods. Because it's brand new, right? It's always going to look... It's like someone having a brand new car. It looks lovely. But when that thing dies, man, does that look a flipping mess. It is horrendous. It's an embarrassment, frankly. 0344 499 1000. Oh, by the way, it's £1,000 fine if you breach the ban, and there's always someone going to dob you in it, isn't there? Lines are open. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views.
I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The weird thing about the Harry Miller case, of course, is that you'd have thought that that would be the beginning and the end of it, wouldn't you? It was so ridiculous that nothing like that could ever happen again. It was sort of beyond... It was beyond satire. It didn't... I think at the time, not everybody would have seen the story because perhaps there wasn't quite such the appetite in 2019 to report on this stuff. I remember we talked about it and there was clearly a certain interest, but it hadn't really... It hadn't developed legs, as they say, at that point. This idea that you could be arrested and brought to book because of something you'd said on Twitter or Facebook. And, of course, you can say terrible things on those forums that do break the law. You know, if you're arranging to kill somebody at a certain time, at a certain address, then that's, likely to have the long arm of the law knocking on your door. We all understand that. If you libel somebody, you pay the personal consequences for that. But stuff like, reposting, not even writing a limerick, it was so ridiculous, the Harry thing. You'd have thought at that point somebody would have just gone, this is bananas. This is so bonkers that we promised the British people this will never happen again. And we've had half a decade, slightly more, of lots of it still happening. And has it got better? A little bit better, because we've had announcements from various police forces, and was it the Home Secretary? I can't remember now, but saying that we will no longer investigate these kind of incidents. I mean, they are... It's curious what people will report. It's really bizarre what people report. It's not just... It's quite mad. It's not just left-wingers that will report, because you think, obviously, they will be the ones that are most offended, kind of the woke ideology. But I've seen it with... years ago, a lot of years ago, I got onto a bit of a... It wasn't even a Twitter spat. It was about 3 or 4 tweets, an exchange... with somebody who used to work in this industry, and they'd gone on to, I don't know, make a podcast or something, and I made some disparaging remark about how, he'd said something on the lines of, I've got 2 million listeners, and I said, you had 2 million downloads, doesn't mean you've got 2 million listeners, because you could have, X amount of people listening to every episode. So that's not listeners in the same way, or something of that nature. And he said, he threatened to sue me. He said, I will sue you if you don't. And I thought, God, this is somebody who literally, their entire image was based on free speech and all that kind of stuff. This person's nowhere now. Never darkened the doorstep here at Talk either. But it was just bizarre. So it doesn't matter. Somebody always will get upset about something, but taking it to the next level is just bizarre. We're going to talk about Ed Miliband in just a sec. Don't go away, Stuart. Let's just quickly do the voice of doom. It was a brand new mystery voice. Day one of the political mystery voice. Let's have a reminder of the voice.
And it was very disappointing.
Who's that then? These were some of the guesses. Nigel Lawson, no. Cyril Smith, no. Of course it's not. Michael Gove, Pat Butcher, yeah, no. George Osborne, no. Alex Dean. Let's hear it again.
And it was very disappointing.
Actually, it does sound a little bit like Alex Dean, a regular contributor with us on the show. William Whitelaw, no. Thomas Hendrick Ives, no. But we did get a right answer from Anna. And she thanks us for the daily dose of sanity on the show, by the way. Congratulations, Anna. The answer to this voice...
And it was very disappointing.
...was Daniel Kowinski. Do you remember him? Conservative MP for Shrewsbury and is it Atcham? Left the House of Commons in May 2024. I assume he lost his seat. And he was marked out because I think at the time he was the tallest MP at 6'9". So well done, Anna, who was the only person through with the right answer, or certainly the only person through in time. Let's go to your call. Stuart's down in London. Stuart, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hello there. Just a quickie. Let's try to get a politician on. Can you mention that in the Middle East they use desalination plants and never run out of water?
Yeah, good point.
Well, might be a good idea. They probably never thought of that. Probably don't know what they are, but
probably not.
now, rather Mad Ed. Now, we talk about him.
Yes.
Now, he doesn't believe in cars, doesn't believe in planes, doesn't believe in ships. How is he going to be travelling around to these various countries where he will refuse to go on a plane, ship, or is he going to be travelling, let me guess, private jets everywhere?
He's going to be using air miles, the likes of which you and I and probably 100 others will never use in our whole life.
But doesn't that show what a hypocrite he is?
Yeah, and most of the stuff can be done on on Zoom.
Yeah, telling you and your family you can't go on holiday, telling everyone else you can't go, but he's going to be travelling all around the world using God knows how much fuel and having goodness knows how much green gases to talk a lot of garbage to other people who don't even want to see him.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I just... The problem that you and I have, though, Stuart, I'm told, is that on the left of the Labour Party... It's quite a fan base for Ed Miliband. I don't understand it. I can't explain it. It seems pretty irrational, a little bit bonkers and all the rest of it. But apparently there is a big appetite for Red Ed.
Right, that just shows you.
I mean, it really does. I mean, even if you let's say you liked his policies, like, I've no doubt that if you met Keir Starmer in a pub and had a pint, he's probably a very nice bloke and very knowledgeable on quite a lot of stuff. And he would be very decent and polite to you. I'm sure Ed Miliband, by the way, I'm told, is quite funny. He's quite humorous. But the job of being a top-notch politician requires that other X factor, doesn't it? You've got to look credible. You've got to sound credible. You've got to sound confident and full of wisdom and sage-like ideas and beliefs. And he doesn't have any of that. So I don't know how he's gained this crown, even on the left.
Which is staggers me. His brother's got more personality.
Yeah, but his brother is a sort of very antithesis of all of that, because he, you know, I wouldn't trust the guy mowing the grass. Well, I haven't got any grass, but I wouldn't trust the guy mowing the grass. But I think he doesn't have any of those problems. He looks like a fairly credible, sensible bloke.
I was listening before on YouTube. They said that Ed Miliband is a cure for insomnia. It's so utterly boring. If you could bottle it, you would never need to take a drug again, because within 10 minutes you fell asleep.
It's absolutely... Do you know, you've given me an idea. I mean, I very rarely struggle to get to sleep. I'm out like a light. But on occasions now, instead of, you know, trying to count numbers backwards from 20 or whatever it is in your head, maybe I just stick a bit of Ed Miliband on.
Exactly.
There is the answer. Good work, Stuart. Thank you, mate, for that. Lovely call. This from Margaret, who says, boy, oh boy, is Donald Trump going to dish out some humiliation to Ed Miliband. He never forgets comments made about him, so can't wait for the encounter. Popcorn at the ready. I was thinking about this, though, because the Foreign Secretary doesn't... I mean, they might meet the President somewhere, but they're not... You know, if there's an official visit to the Oval Office, it's not the Foreign Secretary, it's the Prime Minister, right? So I can't really remember who was the last Foreign Secretary. Yvette Cooper, and the one before that was, who was it before Yvette Cooper? She took the job from David Lammy. David Lammy, wasn't it? David Lammy. I'm sure both. I think Yvette Cooper greeted Donald Trump when he arrived, didn't she, for his last tour? But they're not generally photographed together. It's that their ranks are completely different. But Margaret is right. I mean, at some point in one of those off-the-cuff speeches, you know, the same way he riffs about Sadiq Khan rather brilliantly, there's going to be some Miliband stuff in there. And for a foreign secretary not to, you know, at least acknowledge and talk about the importance of the alliance with the United States in a speech as foreign secretary is just bonkers. I do fear for some people being given positions like this. I don't know at what point Andy Burnham thought this was the very best man for the job of foreign secretary is Ed Miliband. It's bizarre, right? It's completely weird. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh. 25 to 4. This one in from Christine, who says, and this is reference immigration and the use of hotels. The hotel by Southend Airport, says Christine, is now filled with immigrants. My son is blind. He uses cabs to go to the hospital. It costs £10 one way. I'm a pensioner. I try to help him. Cab drivers have told me the immigrant hotel by the airport gets cabs to come into our seafront, high street, doctors, hospitals, etc. Southend Council pay for their cabs, but the cabs don't get paid themselves for about 6 months. This is Southend. We are overrun with HMOs. The Plaza Hotel on our seafront is filled with these people. It's just a joke, and they wonder why we're annoyed. Why would you not be annoyed? It would be... Thank you, Christine, for that. And even just reading it out has annoyed me, given your own circumstances and that of your son. And then down the road, there's a bunch of people that floated across the channel on a boat will get the same hospital appointment cab trip for free. You only need to hear that story to go, right, stop it. Stop whatever's going on, stop it, because this is not working. 0344 499 1000. We've been talking a lot about Ed Miliband, of course, but we have a brand new person in charge of Net Zero and all matters windmill-based. That is Miata Fahnbulleh. Is she going to be as evangelical as Ed Miliband? Because there are rumours on the street that she's, in fact, in a different league from him. More so. Let's speak with Ross Clark, author of Not Zero, How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You, Help China and Won't Save the Planet. Always good to have you on, Ross. I mean, what are we making of Miata Fahnbulleh's appointment? What do we know about this woman in terms of her green agenda?
Yes, well, she's little known among the public yet, but she used to run a left-wing think tank called the New Economics Foundation. In that capacity, in 2019, she wrote a paper arguing that Britain should head for net zero by over the next 10 to 15 years, i.e. by 2029 to 2034. Well, I mean, absolutely nobody believes that is a practical target. You know, it's little better than the Extinction Rebellion target, who demanded we decarbonise everything by 2025, which would have taken us back to the Stone Age, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, Miata Fanbule had absolutely no idea of how she was going to, how anybody could decarbonise a major economy like Britain's within just 10 to 15 years. It requires multiple technologies to be developed, commercialised, to take over from the established technologies. It's not just energy, but, you know, cement production, steel making, and all the rest. You know, it just seemed to be like, you know, because Ed Miliband and the government, the Tory government by that stage had advocated this net zero target by 2050. She thought, well, I'll do a bit earlier. I'll demand that they do it a bit earlier, then I'll sound sort of terribly virtuous for doing that. But what else do we know about her? She was a junior minister in Ed Miliband's department for the first year of the present government. And she was in charge of energy consumers and in sort of decarbonising homes through insulation schemes and heat pumps and what have you. And in that capacity, she was taught a very severe lesson about net zero targets, because there's something called the Eco4 scheme, which provided grants for insulation schemes, particularly external wall insulation, internal wall insulation. I can't blame Miata Fanbule for the whole scheme, because it was actually started under Boris Johnson. But she did run it for the first year. And a month after she left, the National Audit Office had a look into it. And they found that virtually all the external wall insulation that was fitted under this scheme was faulty.
Great.
And would require serious remediation. 6% of installations were judged to be, you know, a severe and immediate risk to human health. You know, it just shows you what happens when you sort of chuck money at a problem and try to force these net zero targets through. We just had a load of cowboy builders, took the money. There's a huge amount of fraud involved in this as well. And, you know, we got these faulty installations. So, I mean, all the billions spent on that scheme were pretty well wasted.
I mean, it is, whatever way you slice this, it is just, I mean, I keep using this word bonkers today, but I mean, it really is that great tabloid word bonkers when you look at this, because even if you wanted to be sympathetic to some of the initiatives that people like Ed Miliband and his now incumbent in that office, Miata, but even if you said, OK, we'll do the windmill thing. We'll do the what's the other thing they love? There's a windmill, and of course there's a
solar farm.
The solar farms, the solar farm. You know, we'll do it, but we're not going to do it now. We'll do it. You know, we'll see how we go, and we'll look more at it, you know, in a more organic way. What we're not going to do is put big chunks of tens, hundreds of billions of pounds into something when we've got a problem with the NHS, problem with welfare, and a problem with defence. I don't know why anybody would disagree with that. That would surely be a more obvious, intelligent thing to do. Because we're not going to die in the meantime, and neither's the rest of the planet.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the big problem with wind and solar is it's intermittent, and so far this government and the previous government were no better on this, just kept on, you know, putting out grants for construction of wind and solar farms without ever dealing with this fundamental problem, an obvious problem of intermittency. So we've got to this stage now. We've got, you know, it's a dangerously unstable national grid in some respects that sort of struggles when large quantities of solar energy are being fed into it and large quantities of wind energy. We have to balance. The electricity supply and demand has to be balanced at every moment. And the more intermittent energy you put into it, the more difficult it becomes. And that's a sort of problem which has never been resolved as we sort of try to race towards this net zero target.
When it comes to how we energise our country and looking at different forms, obviously the nuclear issue becomes a problem because of the time it would take to build. I mean, we've got some things up and running, but there are, of course, these slightly smaller plants that can be done a bit quicker. Do you have any knowledge on this, Ross, as to... Because people say even that would take, I don't know, 7 years or something, or maybe slightly longer to put in place. I'm pretty sure if you went to China, China could do one of these a lot quicker.
Well, China's certainly been pumping out the solar panels, and
that's very true.
We've been using their, products on that front for our own installations. But yeah, the small-scale nuclear reactors, which are about supposed to be about 1/10 of the power of a major power station. Now, that could be very promising technology, in particular because at the moment we have these sort of huge construction sites for Hinkley C and so on, and everything is built custom made for the site, and it's built out in the open air. Now, if we could rationalize the production of nuclear reactors so that components could all be built in factories, yes, and then run off like any other manufactured product, it could potentially bring down the cost enormously. But of course, it's still a bit of an early stage idea. We don't have these small nuclear reactors at the moment, and frankly, the estimate is that we still won't have them until well into the 2030s. So I mean, anybody who's thinking it could be in time for Ed Miliband's decarbonised grid by 2030, or Miata Farnbully's target of decarbonising the whole country by 2035, it's just not going to happen. The technology takes time to develop, it takes space to develop, and if you rush at it, you will just waste an enormous amount of money.
What should we do, Ross, in the meantime? I mean, obviously we can drill, we can look at resources that are under our feet and all the rest of it. There's obviously a time element to some of that as well. There are questions about how plentiful in the long term that supply might be. What is your answer, broad, shorthand answer, Ross, to what you would do day one to get bills down and everybody feeling a little safer about energy security?
Well, first of all, grant new licenses in the North Sea, because North Sea gas would be a much cheaper alternative to doing what we're doing at the moment, which is importing liquefied natural gas from America, Qatar, and so on, because it costs a lot of money to liquefy the gas and then regasify it, and it also consumes more carbon emissions. So, that's one thing we've got to do. Wind and solar, I'm not against wind and solar. We could incorporate some of that into our grid, but if you want any more than we have already, you absolutely have to solve this problem of intermittency, and that will require large amounts of energy storage. Now, the trouble is, at the moment, energy storage is very, very expensive. So until we can get the price of that down, then the price of wind and solar, is effectively very high, because although the marginal cost of generating electricity from wind turbine or a solar panel might be very cheap, the sort of system costs of incorporating that energy into a workable grid become very expensive. So you've got to work on energy storage, and also small nuclear reactors. Great technology, go ahead with them, but I say it's not going to happen tomorrow.
It's not going to happen tomorrow. Listen, Ross, great to talk again. Thank you very much. Ross Clark, columnist and author of Not Zero: How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish Your Life, Help China, and Won't Even Save the Planet. Thank you to him. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Kevin O'Sullivan's here after 4 o'clock with Drive. We'll chat to Kev before then as well to find out what's going on his programme. It's a little after 3:45. You're listening to Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views.
I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
John in Glasgow says, Ian, Burnham and spending, you say you'd like to think Burnham is not stupid, but there is a difference between being not stupid and not caring. He doesn't care about this country. Please don't listen to his bluster. We are in trouble with his mob at the helm. Thank you, John, for that. I think we are absolutely in trouble. We will, you know, I reckon we find out in probably about 4 weeks. We've already got a flavour of things, but I think in 4 weeks there will be arguably a bit more meat on the bones that we can truly and objectively analyse and get the direction of travel. And the only thing I can really think, I mean, he's talked about, you know, this bloke that nobody, half the country would never even have heard of, more than half, up until half an hour ago, OK? This bloke was a cabinet minister. He worked with Blair, he worked with Brown. And, of course, he was the mayor of Greater Manchester. So in those spheres, you'll be familiar. If you love a bit of politics and you're of a certain age, you will remember his time in office. But he wasn't a global or even a national phenomenon. People didn't rally round. Nobody would have ever answered a survey. Name a politician in the last 20 years that's, like, really, really, like, top-notch, as tasty as it gets when it comes to political acumen, brains and vision. Nobody would have ever said Andy Burnham, all right? So somehow he's got himself in this place and he's now the Prime Minister. I don't know what he's going to bring to the table in this time. I don't know what this sort of inner brilliance is meant to be. It all looks a bit theatre and performative right now, and I genuinely believe that that's going to become his first biggest problem. That the constant sort of TikTok-y Instagram videos will wear thin very quickly if they haven't already. The idea that I'm your mate and every postcode's going to have some hope and all this kind of stuff. I just, you know, the results you need to see, that takes a bit of time. But within a month, I think we'll get a better idea of the direction of travel. The gambit I think he's playing here is that he's working on the basis that there are more people on the left than on the right. I know that always sounds... or more people that will say they're on the left than the right. Depends how people vote, two different things. And it's that crowd he's going to hoover up. And he thinks he can hoover that up while Reform and the Conservatives and maybe Restore split into 3, not quite equally by any means, but you take the point. and he comes in and can't fail to win. So his biggest nod is going to be to that kind of left-wing Miliband-esque Green Party gallery, because that's where the bookies would say his best possibility lies. So don't be surprised when you don't hear anything about immigration, and you do hear a lot about net zero. Greg's in Edinburgh. Greg, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Well, there were actually two words of what you just said covered what I was going to say. And one of them was performative, and the other one was postcode.
Yeah.
And I was going to highlight the irony of his meaningless sloganeering and how depressingly broken this country is. That they say the hope in every postcode at a time when, yes, we hope that a letter will arrive within a week, and that we don't need to mortgage my house to buy a stamp now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, he's invoked post office analogies, probably to his detriment.
Yes, and the other thing was, I'm talking about, performative and seriousness, and you just think, this does not bode well. When they made this issue of will he or won't he have a podium?
Yeah.
People around him, he had advisors and presumably sensible people discussed the fact, will he look better or without a podium? When do they really think that the people of this country give a toss about whether their new Prime Minister, who has all these problems to deal with, stands wearing something or not wearing something or standing with a podium?
Exactly right. And by the way, for the record, Greg, I love a podium. I hate it when, I think, was it Blair or Cameron started it, can't remember. When they give their conference speech and they decide not to stand at a podium but roll their sleeves up and just sort of walk around the stage. I've no idea why that is seen as something that is meant to be more accessible.
Well, I think it's probably because all the best, like Hitler liked the podium.
Yeah.
So then, you can't be associated with podium.
Well, that's fair.
That's the right word. So I think you're showing your fascist tendencies.
But you're absolutely right. It's exactly that. But also, there's a certain sort of authority, isn't there, that you get from a podium, and I think I'm making it worse, aren't I? But I do think I take a politician slightly more seriously. And they look more comfortable when, that whole thing of what do you do with your hands? They did this in television. I've done a little bit of TV to know this, Greg. They got into this place where they decided to sit presenters on sofas rather than at desks. And the problem with that is you're then stuck, particularly as a bloke, oddly, not just what to do with your hands and your arms, but what to do with your legs. And I've done shows where they sit you on a stool. All that happens there is your trousers go halfway up your legs and you look ridiculous. So your podium covers all problems, right?
Yeah, well, with respect,
I haven't sold the podium to you, have I, Greg? I'm sure.
Yeah, but that's fine if you're presenting Good Morning Britain and you're about to go over to you for the weather.
Yeah.
Not if you're about to make decisions about how to stop the country being bankrupt.
That's very true. So you don't care whether he's podium bound or without one?
I don't. But my whole point was he's not a serious man. He hasn't addressed any of the serious problems yet.
Yeah.
He's more froth. He's more the modern type of politician in all of the parties. We just need a change to find serious, intelligent, committed, honest people to run us, and he just does not fill me with anything other than more depression at the way the country's going.
Let's do a crowdfunder and buy him a podium. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that, Greg. Listen, you've been brilliant. Really lovely to talk. I do quite like the podium thing. I just think it kind of just feels, it gives a certain vibe. And what's interesting about it, if you take, there's a good analogy here with Nigel Farage. So we keep talking about, we don't know what Andy Burnham stands for. Nobody would put him on a list. If you'd asked people a year ago, name a politician of the last 20 years who's got a political ideology that you like. Now, Nigel Farage, doesn't matter whether you love him or hate him, you know what he stands for. He's been waiting in the wings for years. if he pounced and became the Prime Minister, you'd have an idea. Andy Burnham came with none of that at all. Most people had never really heard of him, and even those that had could not have, with a straight face, said, yeah, this is exactly what his ideology is. This is what Andy stands for to his core. Nobody knew. You could do that with Nigel Farage. But Burnham, you couldn't. So it's going to be interesting how this unfolds. We do know he likes to make a bit of a TikTok video and grins a lot and flutters his long eyelashes. A bit like Kevin O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I do that a lot, yeah.